Chapter 49. Ding Ming and the others were not the ones who were really worried, but Baines sighed. This was because the patrol fleet's quantum probe was also connected to their communication channel, and the warning was completely different. This is the Norse Empire's interstellar patrol fleet, the Falcon attack spacecraft of Route 112 A2CD. You are close to the nebula TCP-121. This is an area under the jurisdiction of the Empire. You have 5 minutes to turn back. No matter what you did before, we will let bygones be bygones. If you do not turn back, we will use force to expel you, and you will bear all the consequences. This is the first warning. Hearing this, the blonde's expression also became serious. Oh no, Officer Baines. They think we are interstellar pirates. It would be strange if they did not think of them as interstellar pirates. Baines was furious. The black gold base could not see the light of day, and all the spacecraft in the base did not have any markings. Regardless of whether it was the Federation or the Empire, when they saw their unorthodox spacecraft, they would associate them with interstellar pirates. When dealing with interstellar pirates, these regular fleets would never reason with you, especially the Norse Empire's fleet, which had always been known for being tough and domineering. They would treat you like a stray dog. Baines turned his head to look at the map. The swordfish was flying in front of him, and the Falcon flying ship was very close to it. However, the problem was that on another route in the distance, there were many flashing red dots. There were at least 20 star ships in the Empire's patrol fleet, and Baines did not doubt the existence of powerful assault ships. Calculate. If we take down 703C before the third warning, how long will it take? Baines appeared very calm. The blonde was shocked. Officer, if we execute the attack program, I'm afraid the memory, Baines coldly interrupted her. According to the customer's request, we can destroy the memory under extreme circumstances. This will not violate the agreement. If the memory falls into the hands of others, the consequences will only be more serious. Hurry up and act. The blonde stopped arguing and quickly lowered her head to calculate. 1 minute and 12 seconds. Baines clenched his teeth. Prepare to attack. At the same time, the swordfish's cockpit flashed red, and the alarm went off. The system's voice sounded. Dangerous energy, scan detected and locked onto the ship. All personnel prepare for impact. Damn, he's really going for the kill. Vader truly admired Baines' guts for daring to make a move right under the nose of the Empire's patrol fleet. The sloppy man looked relaxed. Let me guess, they're going to use cannons to deal with us. Ding Ming immediately stared at him. You have a way, don't you? The sloppy man said, if you treat me to a good meal next time, I can help you again. Ding Ming was also gritting his teeth. If we survive this time, I'll treat you to countless meals. The sloppy man beamed with joy. Not bad. You're very generous. I've always liked to deal with generous people. After saying that, he turned around and pressed a series of buttons on the optical computer. In space, the Falcon flying at high speed seemed to have turned into a pupil of light from afar. The pupil of light slowly gathered energy and gradually became bright and dazzling. After condensing for a moment, it flew out of the main body of the ship with a whoosh. A ball of bright white energy was seen crashing into the transport ship at an extremely fast speed. Along the way, the ball of energy changed into a sword-like arrowhead and streaked across the night sky like a comet, shocking the entire world. The red light inside the transport ship was no longer flashing. It was completely still, a sign that it was about to be bombarded. Vader felt as if his heart had stopped beating. The system's voice began to count down, preparing for impact. 5, 4, 3, 2. Just as the cannon shell was about to hit the rear of the transport ship, something inconceivable happened. As if it had been enchanted, the cannon shell actually took a big turn and flew into the distance, disappearing into the depths of the universe. What? Baines couldn't believe his eyes. The Empire's patrol fleet didn't react either. It was likely that the people above were also dumbfounded by this scene. What the hell was going on? Was this a kid's family? Are the two of you acting? Were you messing with us? The blonde woman's expression also became bewildered. The other party, the hacker on the ship, is very skilled. We use an automatic positioning system and an automatic tracking system. It's very likely that he took control of our weapons flight system through the International Space Network and tampered with the internal data. The cannon shell couldn't hit them. Vader was already panting heavily. There was no longer any doubt in his eyes as he looked at the unkempt man. Now, there was only worship. "You, who the hell are you?" The unkempt man spread his hands and said, "I've already shown them mercy. If I had directed the cannon shell to fly towards the Empire's fleet, you can imagine what would have happened to them." Ding Meng sighed helplessly. "You should have diverted the trouble to someone else. If you didn't kill them in one blow, they wouldn't have let it go." However, he couldn't blame the other party now, because the unkempt man definitely didn't know about the K-virus memory chip. Vader was still in shock. "Looks like we should be safe this time." The unkempt man said, "You're wrong." Vader was stunned. "I'm wrong." The unkempt man said, "I'll give you a suggestion. Send a distress signal to the Empire's fleet right now." Vader was stunned. "Why?" The unkempt man said, "Let's continue guessing. If their commander has any brains, he should have shut down the entire ship's signal transmission system, completely cut off the connection to the International Space Network, enter the command system's safe mode, and then use the most traditional manual mode to deal with us. Let me think. Cannons, pulse cannons, and heat cannons should have a hard time hitting us. All right, they also have particle laser cannons. If they have a shooting expert on the ship, then let's prepare to be finished once again." This time, there was no need for him to remind him. Vader rushed to the central control station like a mad dog and sent out an SOS distress signal at top speed. In fact, it was already too late to send out a distress signal. The Falcon spacecraft had caught up with them again. For metal cannon barrels had already extended from the bottom of the hull. The tips of the barrels weren't cannon muzzles, but four sparkling blue metal balls. Crackling with energy arcs, they seemed to be gathering energy again, and the blue color quickly turned red. This time, the unkempt man's expression was a little serious. He enlarged the optical computer screen and cut to the first-person view of the swordfish spacecraft. From Ding Meng's point of view, they were just like the spacecraft itself, flying at high speed in space. The radar at the bottom left indicated that there was a threat behind them, and at the same time, densely packed data was being refreshed rapidly. Vader looked at him in shock. "You want to manually pilot the spacecraft?" The unkempt man glanced at him. "Do you have a problem with that?" No problem," Vader stammered. He had only thought that Baines was bold, but now he saw someone who was even bolder. He actually dared to manually pilot the spacecraft at such high speed. Was this person crazy? Chapter 50. In fact, it was not impossible to manually pilot a spacecraft during interstellar travel. Under normal circumstances, as long as it was on a normal route or in a safe area, it could be manually piloted. The problem was that the sloppy man had now deviated from the preset route, and at the same time, the ion drive was not turned off. This was very risky because the reaction of ordinary humans was limited. If the speed was too fast, it was easy to crash into a meteorite belt. The map showed that there were as many meteorite belts as there were hairs on a cow near the TCP-121 nebula. On the other side of the starry sky, a mighty and domineering patrol fleet was also heading in the direction of Ding Meng. In the bridge of the leading ship, the officer was paying close attention to the movements of both sides. He had no hostility toward the swordfish spaceship. Although the other party was a Federation ship, civilian spaceships posed no threat to the military. Instead, he was quite dissatisfied with the pirates' Falcon spaceship because the other party turned a deaf ear to their warnings. However, the strange scene of the cannon shells just now had piqued his interest. "I can't believe that a civilian spaceship hid such a high-level hacker." The officer seemed to be sighing. At this time, the adjutant on the side pointed at the screen and shouted, "Sir, look, the pirate ship is firing again." The Falcon spaceship's laser cannons indeed shot out a large number of red electric particles. The appearance of these lasers was actually very different from the bullets of an energy machine gun, but the electric particles were shot out in a large string. The blonde was very skilled at shooting. She was now sitting upright and using the mechanical joystick in front of the screen to manually operate. She did not aim and then fire, but fired toward the left side of the swordfish. Then, the laser connected into a line and pulled the line to the swordfish. To put it bluntly, it was a fool's shot. The method was a bit clumsy, but it was quite practical in this high-speed flight. The success rate was higher than directly aiming and firing. However, she underestimated the sloppy man's strength. As soon as she fired, the radar began to warn her. The swordfish also flew diagonally to the right. It flew very well. It did not make a sharp turn, but moved slowly in accordance with the frequency of the laser. Just from this point alone, the blonde woman showed a look of admiration. She knew that she had met a fellow player. If the other party made a big turn or made a sharp turn, it proved that he was a rookie. Because even if you could avoid the first round, there was no room for you to avoid the second round. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time to recharge the battery. The sloppy man looked very relaxed. It's impossible for a single cannon to hit me. Just because he was relaxed didn't mean that Vader was relaxed as well. Vader wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Thank goodness, thank goodness. Brother, you are indeed an expert. I believe in you. Ding Meng suddenly said, what if the enemy isn't using a single cannon? The sloppy man glanced at him and smiled. Good question. Look, aren't they here in the second round? The radar indicated that the swordfish behind them was coming again. Little rascal couldn't help but say, Hey, Ding Meng, you jinx. You really have a soft spot. The second round of shooting was the simultaneous firing of a number 2 and number 3 cannons. It was the same stupid shooting method, but the difference was that the blonde woman used 2 laser beams to attack from the left and right, completely sandwiching the swordfish. Let's see how you dodge this time. The blonde woman was a little excited. Then the transport ship should be finished. The adjutant sighed. The officer nodded in agreement. The swordfish transport ship's shortcomings were obvious. In order to pursue speed and load capacity, it was designed in the shape of a long shark. Although it was fast when coupled with ion drive, it was very slow and inflexible. To put it bluntly, it was convenient for you to retreat quickly if you encountered an enemy. However, if you were locked on by the enemy's firepower, it was basically a dead end. The fiery red swordfish quickly closed in, as dazzling as fireworks in the night sky. Vader's retina could clearly reflect the fiery red of the swordfish's lasers outside the cabin. They were getting brighter and closer. It's over. Vader closed his eyes in agony. Only Ding Meng stared fixedly at the unkempt man. He saw his fingers curl into a claw and twist fiercely on the screen. The first-person view on the screen also twisted 360 degrees. Then, the ship shook violently, and a series of muffled pa-pa-pa-pa sounds came from above, as if something had been hit. The unkempt man's expression relaxed again. It's fine, it's fine. Everyone, don't panic. The laser probably scraped the surface of the steel plates. It's not a big deal. That was really the case because the system sounded an alarm. Warning, warning. Hull damage 0. 37%. Looking at the 3D model of the ship again, only a few layers of steel plates at the top had turned completely red. It was obvious that they had been damaged. Vader opened his eyes again. Clutching his heaving chest, he looked at the big screen in agitation. I said, brother, I believe you. However, at the same time, the blonde woman almost jumped out of her seat. This can't be. Baines was also dumbfounded. The 2 powerful beams of fire were clearly about to crush the swordfish, but for some reason, the swordfish turned in a circle at the moment of the combined attack and miraculously dodged it. After the second round of fire, battery number 2 and battery number 3 also needed to be recharged. The officer and adjutant on the lead ship were also dumbfounded. If the swordfish could perform such a dodging maneuver, they believed that many experts could do it. However, to be able to dodge so precisely, the conditions required were really harsh. Not only did the pilot have to be very familiar with the structure, principles, and performance of the 2 ships, but they also had to be very familiar with the Falcon's weapon system. Most importantly, they had to have a good grasp of the timing in the moment of dodging. If they were a fraction of a second faster or a fraction of a second slower, the ship would be destroyed and people would die. They had to make a precise turn at the moment when the two beams of fire crossed. The officer held his chin and looked at the screen with interest. Interesting, the adjutant said. Sir, should we stop that pirate ship? The officer immediately glared at him. Why are we helping the Federation's ship? Are you trying to break the rules? The adjutant immediately stopped talking and resentfully retreated. The officer murmured, I'm very curious. Who are the pilots of these two ships? Their standards aren't low. If I were the shooter of that pirate ship, I would wait for another minute. When all 4 batteries are fully charged, we'll open fire together. Let's see how this transport ship dodges then. In fact, the blonde lady was also thinking the same thing. She was one of the few extremely skilled origin ability statisticians in the company. When she saw that the other party had dodged the first round of fire, she had admired them from the bottom of her heart. After all, in this day and age, people of the same trade were too precious. However, when she saw that the other party had actually passed the second round in such a thrilling manner, her fighting spirit was completely ignited. This sister wants to see who you are and whether you could dodge my full force attack. She wasn't the only one who thought this way. Even Baines had the same idea. After 2 rounds of fire, the Empire's patrol fleet had actually remained indifferent. They hadn't even issued a second warning. Fine, this daddy will definitely destroy you today. If not for the saying that a person's courage came from the indulgence of others, this saying really made sense. When he saw that the Falcon ship behind them had actually stopped attacking for a while, Vader felt a little relieved. They don't seem to have any intention of continuing to attack. Wrong, the sloppy man replied carelessly. Vader's eyes widened. I was wrong again. The sloppy man stared at the radar. This shooter of the other party isn't simple. I think he's most likely waiting for the batteries to recharge so that he can fire all 4 batteries at once. Vader panicked again. What do we do? Can't we dodge? The sloppy man said, we shouldn't be able to dodge. This swordfish's agility is too low. I'll stick to my old words. Everyone, prepare to die together. Chapter 51. System Voice. Weapon Charging. System Charging Complete. System Requesting Authorization. The blonde woman's lips curled into an arc when she heard the string of notifications. She sneered, if you can still dodge this time, then I'll really admire you. After saying that, she first pressed the 4 firing buttons, then fiercely turned the mechanical joystick. From the vantage point of the lead ship, the 4 turrets poured out a large amount of electric particle laser projectiles with a whoosh. Following the Falcon spacecraft's high-speed rotation, the electric particle projectiles were like a large net that enveloped the swordfish. The subsequent laser projectiles twisted and rotated with the spacecraft's rotation, twisting and turning like a spiral toward the swordfish. Without superb piloting skills and rich shooting experience, it was impossible to fire such a bizarre and spectacular attack. The officer and adjutant held their breaths at the same time. They couldn't imagine how the swordfish would be able to struggle this time. Under such dense and powerful firepower, any civilian transport ship would be blown to smithereens. Ding Meng and Vader kept a close eye on the sloppy man. Now, everyone could only pin their last hope on him. Whether or not a miracle could be created depended on how he operated the spacecraft. The sloppy man's expression finally turned serious. This time, he didn't touch the screen with one hand. Instead, he stretched out both hands at the same time and pressed them on the top and bottom of the screen respectively. Then, he rapidly twisted and shook. It was a pity that Ding Meng wasn't a piloting expert. If he was, he would have been able to see that the sloppy man's shaking pattern perfectly matched the trajectory of the opponent's laser projectiles. The subtlety and charm of this could only be understood by an expert of the same trade. The blonde woman quickly understood. When a large net was cast, the swordfish didn't make any large movements to dodge. Instead, it continued to fly diagonally to the right, as if deliberately hanging on to the edge of the large net. The side wing of the spacecraft immediately burst into white flames with a bang. System voice. Warning. Warning. Hull damage is 16. 33%. Vader's heart was about to jump out of his chest. On the three-dimensional model, the left side of the hull was gradually turning from pale yellow to fiery red. This degree of damage basically pointed to disaster. Ding Meng, on the other hand, was very calm. He could tell that the sloppy man had purposely allowed the spaceship to be hit. He believed that the sloppy man had done so for a reason. Sure enough, the swordfish spaceship was knocked into a spiral by the violent tremors. Then, it spun at an acute angle of 30 degrees. Because the lasers were too concentrated, it looked like it was going to be grazed or hit. The bow and stern of the spaceship twisted at high speed, but the center of the spaceship was stable and motionless. Like a propeller, it miraculously avoided the rain of lasers. Just like a small fish in the seaweed. No matter how the seaweed twisted and whipped, it just couldn't touch the slippery fish. The officer's eyes were finally transfixed. To be able to drive an ordinary swordfish transport ship to such an appalling degree, to be honest, even he couldn't do it. The adjutant also had a look of disbelief on his face. Is this a manual operation? Is he still human? This was definitely a manual operation, because if the spaceship used the automatic dodging program hosted by the system, in order to protect the ship's endurance, it was impossible to perform such inhuman actions. The blonde woman finally opened her mouth wide. She had no choice but to accept it now. The opponent was a freak among freaks. How the F***CK could he dodge like that? The turret was about to enter a long recharge mode. She was out of options now, so she couldn't help but turn to look at the officer beside her. Bane's gaze fell on the three-dimensional map. He had already seen clearly that the swordfish had changed course again and was flying in the direction of the Dynasty's fleet. He gritted his teeth. How much longer do they have before they enter the range of the Dynasty's fleet? The blonde woman instantly understood and quickly pressed on the screen. They've already been hit. If they don't turn off the ion engine, there's a 30% chance that the spaceship will disintegrate. They can reach the port of the search and rescue ship in 7 minutes and 11 seconds at the earliest. 7 minutes and 11 seconds. This was the last time they had left. Turning back now was definitely not a problem. But if they continued to attack, even if they managed to take down the enemy within 7 minutes, the result would be that they couldn't turn back because they couldn't escape. The Dynasty's fleet would definitely take care of them. Activate the rapid recharge mode and execute the extreme attack sequence. Bane's expression was firm, and a trace of determination appeared in his eyes. The blonde woman's expression darkened. She knew that her officer was determined to perish together with the enemy. They definitely couldn't let the memory chip fall into the hands of others. To put it bluntly, the extreme attack sequence meant that they had to take down the swordfish even if they had to exhaust all of the ship's energy. They didn't give the enemy a way out, nor did they give themselves a way out. When the time came, the Dynasty's fleet would turn around and attack them. Everyone was likely to be buried in this vast universe. At this moment, the situation on Ding Meng's side wasn't looking too good. The left side of the hull was completely destroyed, and the speed of the ship immediately slowed down. Furthermore, the ion drive hadn't been turned off. The entire ship could no longer withstand the pressure brought about by high-speed flight. The system was constantly alarms, and the damage to the hull continued to rise. 16, 33%, 17, 29%, 18, 11%, 19, 56%. Vader's teeth seemed to be bleeding from clenching them. We should be able to be rescued before they finish recharging, right? The sloppy man regained his relaxed demeanor. Wrong. Right now, Vader was most afraid of hearing him say those two words. Wrong again? The sloppy man smiled as he glanced at Ding Meng. I'm very curious. What exactly did you steal from them that they have to be so persistent? Ding Meng couldn't help but be infected by this fellow's bearing. He returned the smile. I stole something that I can't return to them. The sloppy man could only spread his hands at Vader. Then there's no other way. It seems that they won't retreat until they've completely destroyed us. Vader was still unconvinced. So what? Brother, your flying skills are so high. They won't be able to hit us. The sloppy man sighed. If they're determined to kill us, I'm afraid that they're rapidly recharging right now. Next, they'll use the Falcon attack ship's extreme attack mode to deal with us. At the end of the day, Vader was still hoping for a fluke. What if they don't use the extreme attack mode? The sloppy man smiled again. Using your logic to explain it, then there's a 99% chance that they'll use it. Vader couldn't help but roar loudly. Is there really no other way? The sloppy man looked at him with interest. Yes. This time, we're really done for. I won't speak carelessly. The alarm suddenly sounded again. The system's voice was cold and merciless. Warning. Warning. A large amount of high-risk energy scan has been detected and has locked onto the ship. All personnel are to prepare for impact. Vader's pupils immediately contracted. The sloppy man really wasn't spouting nonsense. The people of Black Gold Base would rather die than let them go. Ding Meng, who had been very calm all this time, suddenly opened his mouth. I have an idea. Vader was like a drowning man who had grasped at a life-saving straw. What idea? Brother, hurry up and tell me. As long as we can get out of here alive, I guarantee you an unimaginable reward. Ding Meng's expression looked even calmer than the sloppy man's. Use the escape pod. There might still be a glimmer of hope. Vader didn't ask any more questions. Like a frightened deer, he flew out of the cockpit. At this moment, the sloppy man and Ding Meng actually stood still in the same spot. It wasn't until the cockpit door closed that the sloppy man looked at Ding Meng with a strange expression. He slowly opened his mouth and said, I just realized that you're definitely not a good person. I'm not a good person to begin with. Ding Meng replied indifferently. Chapter 52. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The spherical muzzles of the particle laser turrets once again lit up with blue electric arcs. What was different from before was that this time, the energy condensed by the new electric arcs was clearly stronger. The brightness, color, and energy flow were all qualitatively improved. From afar, it looked like an extremely bright disk. After a long time, the four turrets fired a large red ball of artillery shells that flew toward the tail of the swordfish like a meteor chasing after the moon. The artillery shell was like a rolling snowball, growing bigger and brighter as it flew. It was just like a miniature sun crashing into the swordfish spaceship. The cockpit door on the swordfish opened again, and Ding Meng and the sloppy man walked out side by side. Now that the spaceship had switched back to autopilot mode, the two of them had different expressions. Ding Meng appeared very calm, but his expression was thoughtful. The sloppy man appeared very calm, as if he didn't care about the storm of destruction that was about to come. However, the two of them had one thing in common, and that was that they were exceptionally calm. I've realized that you're quite knowledgeable about human psychology. The sloppy man actually said such an inexplicable sentence on the eve of destruction. Others might not understand this, but Ding Meng definitely did. Vader's psychological defenses had probably collapsed a long time ago. When Ding Meng said that there was still a glimmer of hope by using the escape pod, he would definitely run to the SOS pod without hesitation. It was like a drowning person who thought that there was still hope for survival, even if he was holding on to a small piece of wood. Even if the escape pod was small, how could it avoid detection by the radar? Once it flew out, it would only result in an even faster death. At the end of the day, Ding Meng was trying to lure Vader into suicide. The sloppy man had undoubtedly seen through this, which was why he said that Ding Meng wasn't a good person. He deserved to die. Ding Meng sneered. He didn't have a good impression of Vader. How many people in the Black Gold Base had died at Vader's hands, either directly or indirectly? Ding Meng had never forgotten the scene of the child who had his finger broken by Sadler's whip and died a horrible death. This executioner, whose hands were stained with the blood of the laborers, deserved to die without a burial place, and there was no need for him to do it himself. At this moment, the snowball missile was halfway through its flight when it suddenly exploded with a bang. It turned into countless electric particles that spread out and formed a huge disk that covered the swordfish ship. The sloppy man wasn't spouting nonsense. This kind of large area attack wasn't something that could be dodged by humans. After all, the swordfish's power was limited, so it could only take this attack head-on. The disk was filled with densely packed electric particle laser bullets. Although most of them missed when they flew past the spaceship, there were still a few that hit. Boom! The rear of the spaceship began to catch fire, and smoke began to spread towards the middle of the spaceship. The entire spaceship trembled violently, and all kinds of facilities in the central hall were sent flying. The sloppy man was caught off guard by a flying chair, and he fell to the ground. His head hit a steel frame, and the shock caused his nose to bleed. However, what was strange was that Ding Ming actually reached out to help him up. What was even stranger was that the first thing the sloppy man did when he got up was neither to thank him nor to quicken his pace. Instead, he let go of Ding Ming's hand, took out a white towel from his trouser pocket, and carefully wiped the blood off his face. After that, he straightened his collar and slightly messy hair. Ding Ming looked at him and suddenly revealed a gentle smile. I know you're going to say, I can break my head, but my hair can't be messed up. Personal image is more important than anything else. Not bad. Looks like you've understood me a little. You really have good taste. The sloppy man smiled as well. It was a knowing smile. It was a miracle that the two of them could still smile in such a dangerous situation. Sometimes, the meeting between men was often in these inconceivable moments. The sloppy man stood still again, and his eyes looked straight ahead. Finally, a solemn expression appeared on his face. Even if a person is going to die, he should die with dignity and dignity. He should die like a gentleman. He shouldn't die like a stray dog by the roadside. If Ding Ming had heard such strange words in the past, he would have thought that the man was crazy. However, at this moment, he admired the sloppy man very much. This man was almost powerless, but he was not afraid of his impending death. He was not flustered at all. This was the boldness and breadth of mind that a real man should have. This man was a true gentleman. The system announcement. Warning, warning. Hull damage is currently at 45%. Warning, warning. Escape pod closing down in 30 seconds. Warning, warning. Large amount of high-risk energy detected. Scanning is locked onto this ship. All personnel, prepare for impact. The blonde woman's eyes were wide open. According to Bane's orders, they would not stop until the swordfish ship was destroyed. Therefore, the second round of cannon fire came whistling through the air. If the first two rounds were only on fire at the side and the tail of the ship, this round was a fatal blow. At least 5 or 6 laser bullets hit the ship directly. The protective alloy plates on the ship's hull were completely blown away, and a shockwave from the impact spread throughout the ship. Various parts of the ship exploded one after another, and the fire continued to spread. The entire ship was enveloped in white flames, and it was only a matter of time before it exploded. Ding Ming and the sloppy man were still strolling leisurely through the tunnel, but the end of the tunnel was not an escape pod, but a loading pod that was usually used to imprison and transport laborers. The swordfish had a total of 1,780 hibernation pods. The hibernation pods definitely couldn't be used for escape, but the loading pods could be launched in all directions. The hibernation pods were 10 times smaller than the escape pods. No matter how advanced the Falcon's radar was, it wouldn't be able to pinpoint the location of the hibernation pods accurately. Moreover, with 1,780 dormant pods scattered in all directions, how would you know where they were? Dormant pods that were well-nourished would generally last for 30 days. If they were unlucky, they would become nameless coffins floating in space after 30 days. However, if they were lucky, they would be discovered by the Imperial fleet or picked up by other ships, and they would be saved. Of course, in the boundless universe, the chances of survival were really minuscule, but at least it was much better than Vader using the escape pod to fly out and commit suicide. The sloppy man's escape route was hidden here, and Ding Ming had undoubtedly thought of this as well, so the two of them tacitly sent Vader to his death. System voice. Warning, warning, escape pod has been shut down. Launch countdown, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Hearing this voice, Ding Ming imitated the sloppy man's expression after eating his steak and muttered, "What a pity." What's a pity? This time, it was the sloppy man's turn to be curious. Ding Ming smiled. It's a pity that I won't be able to see the escape pod being shot down outside. The sloppy man also smiled, and his smile was relaxed and cheerful. It's a pity that I won't be able to see it either. Chapter 53. The Falcon spaceship was still launching its attacks. Snowball shells were fired out one after another. The swordfish spaceship in front of them was no longer an agile and slippery fish. It was about to become a dead fish. It was a good thing to be a dead fish. The spaceship was now a fireball in its final flight. Baines stared at the map. Keep a close eye on it. Shoot any suspicious spaceship that appears. The blonde lady pointed at the screen. Officer Baines, a miniature spaceship is coming out. It must be an escape pod. The radar wouldn't lie. On the three-dimensional map, the red cursor representing the swordfish was flickering at a very fast frequency. This was a sign that it was about to explode. At this moment, a tiny dot flew out from the cursor, flashing with a weak yellow light. If one didn't look carefully, it would be hard to notice. Baines said, "Zoom in." The image quickly zoomed in. It was a UK-type escape pod. From the outside, it looked like a spherical spaceship. The alloy on the surface of the escape pod was extremely hard. Even if it collided at high speed, it would not break. It was very suitable for escape. Baines finally smiled, but he only spat out one word coldly. "Kill." The blonde lady smiled too. Since they were on the escape pod, there was no use for a hacker like you. She quickly connected the control system to the International Space Network and switched the shooting mode to automatic aiming. This time, the four turrets opened fire at the same time. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Electrical particles covered the sky, completely forming a cylindrical trajectory that surrounded the escape pod. This situation was like a heavy downpour on the ground. No matter what was inside, there was no way you could avoid it. As the electrical particles covered the escape pod, the alloy steel plate on the surface of the escape pod was immediately hit with a ping, 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 ping sound. But as the spaceship continued to increase its firepower, the steel plate began to burn and soon melted. And then, there was no and then. The escape pod was reduced to nothing under the fiery red, cylindrical firepower. The system's voice sounded. "Warning, warning, hull damage is 76. 89%. All units, please evacuate immediately. All units, please evacuate immediately." The interior of the swordfish had turned into a sea of fire. Ding Meng and the sloppy man were facing rows upon rows of neatly arranged hibernation cabins. The white cabins were connected together, giving off the feeling of a graveyard. Ding Meng casually opened the hatch of one of the cabins, then turned around and said, "Before I leave, I want to ask you a question." The sloppy man asked, "What is it?" Ding Meng stared at him. "I still don't know your name." The sloppy man revealed a self-deprecating smile. "I'm afraid the two of us are doomed in the end. What's the point of knowing?" "I must know." Ding Meng sounded very determined. "Even if I'm going to die in the end, I want to know the name of the person who saved me." Looking at his serious eyes, the sloppy man smiled again. This time, it was a very gentle smile. "You don't owe me anything. If it weren't for that steak, I would have starved to death. That was the best steak I've ever had." Ding Meng nodded. "You're also the best pilot I've ever seen. But like I said, I must know. You're a very special guy." The sloppy man sighed. "If you must know, I can tell you. My name is Xin Jia. Xin as in hard work, Jia as in hero. Xin Jia, Xin Jia." Ding Meng repeated the name 5 or 6 times before he looked up. "Xin Jia, thank you." Xin Jia smiled. "You're welcome. We're about to die." Ding Meng said, "All right, let's go together." After that, the two of them entered the hibernation cabins. The hatch quickly closed, and the system began the countdown. Loading the cabins. Prepare to launch. 10, 9, 8, 7. At the same time, in the Imperial fleet, the adjutant pointed at the detection screen and said, "Sir, that transport ship is probably done for this time." The officer nodded. He could already see that in the deep and eternal space, the transport ship was exploding violently. The hull of the ship had completely turned into a bright white fireball. All sorts of metal wreckage floated out from within. It was obvious that the ship was disintegrating. Finally, the fireball slowly disappeared, and space returned to darkness. However, in the depths of the darkness, a black carrier that resembled a missile was opening. The outer metal plates kept falling off, and one by one, The white hibernation cabins were ejected in all directions, flying into the endless depths of space. Baines and the others could not see this hidden image, but it could not escape the detection of the leading ship's advanced radar. The officer was already giving orders. Send out 3 jellyfish aircraft to search. Check the wreckage and confirm their identities. Teams 6, 9, and 12 prepare to depart. If you find any survivors, bring them back immediately. Team 1 set out. Check the nearby area and see if you can find anything valuable. The adjutant walked up. Sir, what about the pirate ship? The officer glanced at the screen. The Falcon spaceship was turning. His tone was very calm. No matter who they are, bring them back. What he meant by bring them back was, no matter if they were dead or alive, even if they were just bones, they had to bring them back. Only then would they be able to answer to their superiors. As soon as he gave the order, 2 blue dots in the Imperial fleet immediately left the formation and flew in the direction that Baines and the others had escaped. Of course, they were not real blue dots. They were completely blue Skywalker assault spaceships. This kind of spaceship looked like a sharp bullet head, with 8 wings spread out at the back. It had a high-power ion engine and a variety of weapons systems. It was one of the sharpest spaceships in space battles. The Skywalkers on the Falcon spaceship were like a father beating his son. It was just like how the blonde woman fought with Ding Ming and the others. You could only defend, but you couldn't fight back at all. On the other side of the space, 3 jellyfish spaceships also flew out of the fleet. This type of spaceship was exactly like its name. It looked exactly like a jellyfish. The 3 spaceships formed a triangle and kept spreading out circular ripples. This was actually a search and rescue force field. It sucked in all the tiny dust particles, escape pods, and debris from the explosion nearby. Then the mecha teams on the spaceships would fly down and check carefully. The useful things would be brought back, and the useless things would be taken care of by the cleaning team. Once the cleaning was done, the area would be like nothing had happened. The other spaceships that passed by would not be able to find any traces. While the officer was watching the cat and mouse game between the Skywalkers and the Falcon spaceships on the screen, the adjutant walked over again. Sir, we found 2 survivors among the thousands of hibernation pods. What should we do with them? The officer's eyes lit up. Oh, the adjutant hesitated. According to the rules, we can follow the standard procedure. Wait. The officer waved his hand to stop him. Bring these 2 people to the connecting cabin. I'll go down and take a look. Chapter 54. D. A soft brown ray swept across the glass panels of the hibernation cabin. The wristwatch immediately raised a screen, and rows of data appeared. Heart rate, 21 beats per minute. Body temperature, 35. 2 degrees. Breathing, 5 times per minute. Brain frequency, 66 Hz. Fatigue, 7%. Infection rate, none. Health status, normal. Sir. A group of medics in platinum armor suddenly straightened their chests and saluted. Is it these 2? The officer walked over and stood in front of the white hibernation cabin. The leader of the medics immediately greeted him. Yes, these 2 are survivors. The officer looked at the sleeping Ding Ming and Xinjia and couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. They were clearly 2 children. In his mind, the person who was able to operate the swordfish so smoothly should be a veteran pilot with plenty of experience and definitely not a brat. Have you confirmed their identities? The officer asked again. The medic shook his head. We have activated the identification system. They are not citizens of the Norse Empire. Oh, the officer was even more disappointed. Are they people from the Holy Grail Federation? The medic looked troubled. Sir, you know that the hospital doesn't have the authority to do this. The officer nodded and said to the adjutant beside him, send the information back to the bridge and let the database check the identities of these 2 children. Yes, sir. The adjutant turned around to receive the order. The medic said again, by the way, sir, according to the scan results, these 2 should be origin ability users. The officer was finally interested. Oh, the medic brought the detector over. This device was square like a box, and the surface was a miniature holographic screen. Although the device was simple, its functions were quite powerful. The data on the screen was more detailed than the wristwatch. Not only did it mark the key data, but it could also generate images. The rays swept across Xingia, and a human figure appeared on the holographic screen. The medic explained, "This person's physical fitness is very average. The evaluation result is H class, but there are very weak energy fluctuations in his brain. The fluctuation index is not high, only 71. The fluctuations are very intermittent and unstable. Since they are both in level 3 hibernation, our preliminary judgment is that he should have made some preliminary contact with origin ability and has an origin ability sensing point, but he hasn't condensed the origin that supports it." The officer didn't answer. He just looked at Xingia thoughtfully. The medic was a little frightened. He couldn't guess what his superior was thinking. He could only point the detector at Ding Meng. "This person's physical fitness is very good. The evaluation result is B class. The hard area has—" "Wait, what did you say?" The officer suddenly interrupted him with a tone of surprise. The Norse Empire had a very strict and detailed evaluation system for the strength of origin ability users. Physical fitness was divided into SSS class, commonly known as 3 stars. SS class was 2 stars, and S class was 1 star. Only those geniuses with extraordinary talent would have these 3 grades. Next was a class, B class. Let's not talk about those below B class for now. As long as an origin ability user reached B class, they were considered to have good physical fitness. As long as they were willing to cultivate diligently, their future would be bright. At the very least, they would be at the level of origin energy generals. Take the current patrol fleet, for example. Of the more than 9,200 people, the vast majority of them didn't reach B class. Most of them were C class, and the highest was the officer himself, whose physical fitness was B class. As for him, he had only reached B class after more than 20 years of cultivation. The child in front of him looked to be around 20 years old. For a 20-year-old to reach B class in physical fitness, other than describing him as a genius, what else could be used to describe him? Of course, physical fitness was only one aspect of strength. It didn't represent everything. The officer stared at the medic suspiciously. "Are you sure he's a B class?" The medic felt guilty under the officer's gaze. He braced himself and replied, "Sir, our fleet isn't the Superpower Affairs Management Center, so we don't use the most professional detection equipment. Sometimes, the results aren't very accurate." The officer was a little impatient. "You better not tell me that the detector is faulty." The medic suddenly stuttered. I'll try another one right away." Someone quickly handed over a new one, but after rescanning, the result of the human figure representing Ding Meng was immediately displayed. B class physical fitness. The officer was obviously shocked. "It really is a B class." The medic didn't dare to say anything else and continued to report. "This person's heart has obvious origin energy fluctuations. The fluctuation index is 193, and the fluctuations are continuous and stable. Our initial judgment is that he has come into contact with origin energy and has an origin energy perception point. However, we can't infer whether or not he has an origin condensation point. In addition, he's also carrying a weapon." The officer's expression returned to indifference. "What weapon?" The medic said, "It's a carabiner, but the material is unclear." The officer sighed, and his expression was a little disappointed. Although the results of the test seemed simple, there was a huge amount of information. In the officer's mind, since Ding Meng carried a cold weapon with him, it meant that he usually practiced blade techniques and used a claw. Since it was a claw blade that was very hard to practice, it meant that its level would not be low. This level usually wouldn't be lower than a beginner origin ability user. In the Empire's evaluation standards, the 3 levels of origin ability users corresponded to 500 points, 1,200 points, and 3,000 points. Only after breaking through 3,000 points would you truly meet the basic requirements to become an origin ability user. 500 points was the most orthodox standard for a beginner origin ability user. Although you're currently in an abnormal state of hibernation at level 3, and the spontaneous fluctuations of origin ability users are relatively weak compared to the 1200-point standard for an intermediate origin ability user. You only have 193 points in index, but you have a B-class physical fitness. What did this mean? This was a classic example of a beautiful jade without any talent. If he had awakened a few years earlier, had a good environment to cultivate in, and had the guidance of a famous teacher, he would definitely have become a great talent in the future. Even if he had normal data, he should have a B-class physical fitness and an origin ability index of around 800 points. However, from the looks of it, this child wouldn't have any great achievements in the future. Of course, he didn't know the truth. When Ding Meng entered hibernation, the little rascal in his body would also enter an energy-saving mode. Strictly speaking, Ding Meng's origin ability directly affected the little rascal's ability to function. However, the little rascal was an intelligent program. Before entering energy-saving mode, many of its protective functions wouldn't be turned off. For example, blocking external signals was one of them. The results of the scanner's scan weren't complete at all, but rather incomplete data. This caused the officer to make the wrong judgment. Moreover, the little rascal only had level 1 authority. The only thing it could do was block the signals of some technological devices. If the authority was high enough, the scanner's feedback could very well be that this child was just an ordinary human. An ordinary human couldn't pose any threat to the military, so it was very likely that others would ignore him, thus reducing Ding Meng's risk factor. Of course, these were all the settings of the AI program. The situation in reality was constantly changing, and no one could predict what would happen next. Chapter 55. Compared to Ding Meng's situation, the officer was obviously more interested in Xing's data. First of all, the energy fluctuations came from the brain. This meant that Xing had a high chance of becoming a talented person. For example, a researcher, a manufacturer, an inventor, a famous director, a famous author, a famous star. This covered a wide range, including all walks of life. However, the most favored by Origin Energy warriors was Origin Energy statisticians. Statisticians who had cultivated to a certain level had brains that were faster and more accurate than optical computers, artificial intelligence, and even the main brain of the super system. They would play a very good supporting role in battle. The larger the scale of the battle, the more obvious their role would be. The officer couldn't be blamed for thinking in this direction. No matter who it was, when they saw the swordfish's shocking roll and dodge in the rain of bullets, they would think that it was the performance of an Origin Energy statistician. Thus, when the data of these two people came out, the officer was certain that this child was most likely the pilot of the swordfish. Moreover, he only had a perception point. It was normal for his energy fluctuations to be unstable. It seemed that he hadn't even reached the level of a beginner Origin ability user. To be able to have such a stunning performance with only a 71-point index, this kind of person was worthy of the title of a genius. As for the physical fitness of a grade H, it was indeed a bit lacking. However, physical fitness could be made up for by diligent training. However, innate talent was something that couldn't be obtained no matter how hard you worked. Besides, even if he was a genius in the Empire, which one of them wasn't hardworking? This was the necessary condition to become a strong person. While he was deep in thought, the adjutant finally came back. "Sir," the officer turned his head and said, "What's the situation?" The adjutant frowned. "We've checked. The two of them aren't citizens of the Holy Grail Federation. From all the data we can find, they don't belong to any country." The officer thought for a while. "You mean the two of them are interstellar refugees?" "I think they are 80%. The adjutant's expression also became thoughtful. "From the flight path of the swordfish, they should be flying from the direction of the KV 3023 nebula. As far as I know, the K7 nebula is in that nebula, and it's close to the Federation. There are many remote planets that the Federation used to exile low-class people. These two children probably escaped from one of those exiled planets." "You have a point." The officer snorted and said, The Holy Grail Federation's higher-ups are full of themselves. They think that the poor are inferior. Although the blood of the inferior is not good, there are also those who work hard. Although their talent is not high, as long as they are diligent enough, they can achieve something. I think these two children must have awakened their senses during their exile and escaped. This time, the aide-de-camp's opinion was completely in agreement with his. Sir, we've just investigated that Xingda Aerospace Limited. This company has a small reputation in the Federation. A considerable part of their business is transporting labor to the refugee camps. The amount of labor they transport is not small. The officer snorted again. What a company with no future. Is there any meaning in doing this kind of business to make money? These words were a little contradictory. He had forgotten how the Empire treated the inferior races. It was basically humanitarian destruction. At the very least, the Federation was humane and gave the inferior races food so that they could at least keep their lives. The aide-de-camp nodded. Maybe the pirate ship colluded with the management of those planets and wanted to capture these two people. This judgment was obviously wrong, but the officer would not point it out. The officer thought that the pirate ship must have wanted to capture this talented child. This child was obviously fleeing in the direction of the Empire. It was obvious that he did not want to go back and live the life of a laborer. In the end, the pirate ship would rather destroy Swordfish than let the child go to the Empire. Sigh, this child is also fated to be with the Norse Empire. Although this was what he thought, he could not say it out loud. I think they want to take back the transport ship, or there's something particularly valuable on the ship. The aide-de-camp immediately said, "The Secret Service mecha team has just checked. There's nothing special. It's all explosive wreckage and solid garbage. There's not much value." The officer nodded and waved his hand. "Forget it. I can't be bothered with the Federation's nonsense. Carry out the original plan of patrolling the line." The aide-de-camp looked at the underground hibernation chamber. "Then what do we do with these two people? Carry out the standard procedure?" The officer looked at Xinjia, who was sleeping soundly. "Send this person to the hibernation chamber of our fleet. Make sure he's supplied. I'll keep him for future use." He was indeed fond of talents. This was the same whether it was the Norse Empire or the Holy Grail Federation. Everyone valued talents, especially origin ability users, but how to find talents was a technical job. The officer's eyes were quite sharp. "Yes, sir." The medic bowed his head respectfully. The aide-de-camp pointed at Ding Meng in the hibernation chamber. "What about this person?" "This." The officer hesitated for a moment. According to the usual procedure, should they just treat him like trash and let him fend for himself in space? But Ding Meng was obviously not trash. What if he was useful? At the very least, he was an origin ability user and had some strength. This was not suitable to carry out the standard procedure. Moreover, looking at the situation, Ding Meng had obviously escaped with Xinjia. These two children might even be friends. Even if they weren't friends, at least they had gone through life and death together. The officer thought far ahead. If this Xinjia really managed to make a name for himself in the future, then today's matter would be a great karma. If Xinjia were to ask about his other little friend's situation in the future, how should he answer? Lying was definitely not good, so he might as well do him a favor. After pondering for a moment, the officer finally said, "The nearest planet here seems to be planet TT-12, right? Inform the nearest space station to send him to planet TT-12. This." The aide-de-camp also hesitated. "Sir, what we're doing is against the rules. He doesn't have the qualifications to be a citizen of the Norse Empire. If the inspection department checks the event recorder, it'll be difficult for us to explain." The officer glared at him. "I know he's not a citizen, but these two people are origin ability users. Looking at the situation, they didn't stay in the Holy Grail Federation and came to the Norse Empire. No matter how you look at it, they're still origin ability users and are still useful. Do you want me to use the standard procedure to deal with origin ability users?" The aide-de-camp thought for a moment and finally let out a long sigh. "Sir, I've obviously been convinced by you. I also think this is the best way. We don't have the authority to deal with origin ability users. Planet TT-12 is a peripheral planet of the Empire. Although he doesn't have the qualifications to be a citizen, it's more suitable for him to go there. The officer nodded. No matter what, he's still an origin ability user. He'll still be of some use. As for the future, it'll depend on his own luck. Contact the space station of planet TT-12 and get him to a peripheral planet. I'll leave this matter to you. The aide-de-camp immediately saluted. Yes, sir. Chapter 56. Ding Meng, wake up. You lazy bum, it's time for you to get up. Ding Meng, wake up. This was Little Rascal's voice. Ding Meng opened his eyes, and his vision gradually cleared up. This time, he was no longer in a world of darkness. He could see light, and he could see light. Next, he found himself lying on a bed. He was not mistaken. This was indeed a bed. It was made of simple wooden frames, and there was a straw mat on top of it. He was lying on this straw mat, and there was a dry, woody smell coming from it. For most people, this smell was undoubtedly unpleasant, but for the laborers who had lived in Black Gold Base for a long time, it was simply a fragrance. Ding Meng even sniffed it carefully. Wow, it was really a straw mat. He could not help but sit up like a carp. Only then did he realize that he was in a simple room. There were no steel plates, no crystal plates, no metal, no hibernation pods. There were no modern technological facilities in this room at all. Of course, there was also none of the dampness, darkness, and unpleasant smells of the mining area. In addition to the bed, there was also a small wooden table in this room. Beside the table were 2 straw stools, which were the most primitive and ancient straw stools in the legends. The surrounding walls could not even be called walls. They were completely made of round logs. Where is this? Ding Meng was very curious. Little Rascal appeared very happy. This is planet TT-12, near the Norse Empire's TCP-121 nebula. Ding Meng, we've escaped. We're saved. La 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 la. Ding Meng's spirit was also shaken. After such a long period of painful struggle for survival, the heavens had finally taken care of him and allowed him to survive. Most importantly, he had managed to escape from Black Gold Base and survived. This feeling of surviving a disaster was very exciting and joyful. Ding Meng could not help but ask, who saved us? Is it Xinjia? Just when he asked the question, a series of images flashed through his mind. Skywalkers chasing after the Falcon spacecraft, jellyfish searching for the Falcon spacecraft, mecha squads picking up the hibernation pods being sent to the logistics ship of the Empire's fleet, the medics inspecting the hibernation pods, the conversation between the officers and the adjutant. Information about what had happened in the outside world while he was in hibernation flooded into his brain almost within a second, allowing him to quickly know the whole story. He curiously asked, "What's going on?" Little Rascal said, "This is my event recorder. It's still working automatically while you're in hibernation. Right now, I'm transferring information into your consciousness space. This is all I can do with my level 1 authority." I see. Ding Meng sighed. It seems that the officers of the Imperial fleet have no ill intentions towards us. It's a pity that we don't know where Xinjia is. Little Rascal snorted. You should worry more about yourself. As soon as she said that, Ding Meng was immediately alerted. There was a slight energy fluctuation outside. Someone was coming. There was a door on the east side of the room, but there was no door. A light yellow curtain made of straw was pulled open, and a man wearing a strange uniform and a pentagon hat walked in. The man sat down on a straw stool and took out a small PDA from his pocket. Looking at the scratches and rust on the surface of the PDA, it was probably used for a long time. The man operated the PDA as he asked, "Name?" Ding Meng was stunned. The man raised his head and glanced at him. "Name? Are you asking me?" Ding Meng finally reacted. The man rolled his eyes. "Of course, if I'm not asking you, then I'm asking the table. Is there someone else in this room?" Although his tone was unfriendly, Ding Meng did not feel any hostility. Instead, he felt a sense of closeness. However, he was already used to being vigilant. Instead of answering, he asked, "Who are you?" The man was so angry that he laughed. No wonder they say you're a galactic refugee. A country bumpkin who hasn't seen the world. Listen well, My name is Douglas Fred. I'm the citizen officer of this area. You can call me Fred. Seeing that you're not that old, you can also call me Uncle Fred. Ding Ming suddenly laughed. He was used to living in the Black Gold base. There was too much deception and mistrust between people. He would never call someone uncle or something like that. Now that someone was asking him to call him uncle, Ding Ming felt that it was quite amusing. Fred's appearance was a bit old, and his beard was a bit white. It was clear that he was quite old, so there was nothing wrong with calling him uncle. What are you laughing at? Am I very funny? Fred's eyes widened. Fortunately, little rascal was already explaining. Ding Ming, this is a village on the outskirts of planet TT-12's Autumn Lake City. You don't have the qualifications to be a citizen of the Empire, so you're considered an outsider. He's currently counting the outsiders in this area. Hearing the explanation, Ding Ming quickly waved his hand at Fred. No, sir. Citizen officer. Kid, at least you're sensible. Fred was obviously very pleased with this title. He continued to type on the computer. Name? Ding Ming noticed that the edge of the computer and the Pentagon hat had the same logo inlaid on it. He had seen this logo on the underground warship outside the dome before. Two short daggers crossed together by a steel ring. So this was the logo of the Norse Empire. No wonder Julie said that Bamboo Pole was a spy sent by the Empire to the Black Gold base. It seemed that she was right. Ding Ming. Ding as in human. Ming as in masked, Ding Ming answered. Fred said, age. Ding Ming said, 20. Fred said, where are you from? Ding Ming said, the Black Gold base. Fred raised his head and widened his eyes again. I'm asking you which planet and which city are you from? Ding Ming sighed. I only know that the place is called the Black Gold base. I don't know which planet it is exactly. Fred stared at him for a while before sighing as well. Forget it. I don't blame you. I know that interstellar refugees, like you, don't know where you came from most of the time. Looking at how skinny you are, you must have suffered a lot. The commanding officer on the space station told me that you were rescued by the patrol fleet during their interstellar patrol, so I won't hold it against you. Ding Ming looked at him and could not help but feel a sense of closeness. Fred said, but you're not a citizen of the Empire, so you don't have a lot of rights. And since you're here, you have to abide by the rules here. Now come with me. I'll tell you about the rules here. Even without his urging, Ding Ming had been looking forward to seeing what kind of world it was outside the house. As soon as the curtain was lifted, a wave of wetness hit his face. Ding Ming felt extremely refreshed. It had been far too long since he had enjoyed such a pure, refreshing feeling. Previously, he had always been in a hot, scorching, and dark environment. But this time, the outside world did not disappoint him. Chapter 57. Misty Rain. This was a real misty rain. It was like a snow-white veil that danced in the air, filling up the entire sky. Beneath the misty rain was an endless field of paddy fields. The paddy fields had yet to fully mature, but some areas were already glowing with a golden color. It seemed that harvest season was coming soon. In addition to the paddy fields, there were also many neat fields and green grasslands nearby. There were cows, sheep, chickens, and birds chasing each other and playing on the fields. A clear stream flowed through the middle of the fields, and the sound of the stream was very pleasant. Compared to the desolate, dark, and oppressive Black Gold base, this place was simply beautiful. It was like a paradise on earth. Even the humid air was accompanied by the fragrance of leaves. Ding Ming could not help but close his eyes. He raised his head and took a deep breath. This was the smell of freedom. Fred had already begun to explain. Planet TT-12 is a peripheral planet of the Empire. Since there is no energy source to be exploited here, but the natural conditions and climate are very good, this place is able to grow all natural green food and raw materials. Ding Ming could not help but sigh in praise. This place is really good. Fred could not help but turn his head and give him a strange look. You are the first person to think that this place is good. Is there a problem? Ding Ming asked. Fred could not be bothered to answer his question. He pointed at a few empty patches of mud. Kid, don't say that Uncle didn't take care of you. From now on, this place is yours. What do you mean? Ding Ming was curious. Fred's expression became even more strange. You can grow vegetables, farm, raise cows, and raise chickens. Ding Meng wondered if he had heard wrong. This brother had finally gotten rid of his status as a laborer, and now he was here to be a vegetable farmer? Fine. If you wanted to grow vegetables, then you need to have vegetable seeds. If you want to raise cows, you need to have calves, right? Ding Meng was a practical person, so his question was more practical. Fred rolled his eyes. That's your problem. My job is only to bring you here. Everything else has nothing to do with me. This. Ding Meng was dumbfounded. Fred then pointed in another direction. You're not alone. You still have neighbors. Looking in the direction of his finger, Ding Meng could clearly see that his room was actually a simple wooden house. Next to the wooden house was a 2-story cement bungalow, and in front of the house was a small courtyard. An old man with a head full of white hair walked out of the courtyard. He was probably even older than Fred, but it was obvious from his face that he was a legitimate descendant of the Chinese. Fred was already greeting him. Old man, you. Come and take a look at your new neighbor. This kid is called Ding Meng. Old man, you smiled happily. Welcome, welcome, Ding Meng. Come in and have a seat. Old man Yu's house was definitely much better than Ding Meng's wooden house. At the very least, it had the most basic amenities. The moment he entered the house, Old man Yu warmly greeted Ding Meng. He first poured him some water and then brought over a plate of nuts. Ding Meng, right? You can call me Old Yu. Come, eat some. I heard from the citizen officer that you survived the interstellar disaster. It must have been very hard on you. You should eat more. In the interstellar era, where everyone took nutrient solutions, this kind of peanut-like nut was a very good snack. Ding Meng still had good taste. He knew that this was a famous specialty of the Norse Empire, sour plum pecans. It was very popular among the rich. Ding Meng suddenly felt very uncomfortable. This was because he was used to the cold eyes and suspicion of others. He was used to the insidiousness and hatred of others. Suddenly, a stranger was showing concern for his well-being. This made him very uncomfortable. Old man, you was an ordinary human. When he was middle-aged, his wife passed away in an accident, leaving behind a daughter to study in Autumn's City. He was the only one living alone on this rural farm, relying on this large piece of land to make a living. He was usually very bored by himself. Now that he suddenly had a neighbor, Old man Yu was very happy. When it was close to evening, Old man Yu even took out 3 nutrient solutions and stuffed them into Ding Meng's hands. Ding Meng, I know that you've just arrived here, and the coming days will be very difficult for you. I don't know if you've done farm work before, but it will definitely be hard. Take these 3 nutrient solutions first. Have a good night's sleep. If you need anything, call me at any time tomorrow. Ding Meng held the 3 nutrient solutions and did not know what to say. In the current environment, of course, he could not refuse such a gift. After all, other than a claw knife and a bracelet, he really did not have anything else on him. However, Ding Meng still asked, Old Yu, you've planted so many grains, vegetables, chickens, ducks, cattle, and sheep on this land. Why don't you cook for yourself? Old Yu's old face showed a hint of emotion. In the end, the nutrient solutions are still cheaper. We can sell these green foods at a good price to the buyers. Ding Meng, you're still young. It's better to save up for emergencies in the future. Although his words were short, Ding Meng immediately understood. This was a planet on the edge of the Norse Empire. It was probably focused on farming. These green foods were not for people like Old Yu to eat, but to be sold at a low price to specialized buyers. The buyers would then sell them at a high price to the big cities of the central galaxy for the rich to enjoy. This was the same nature as the workers mining in Black Gold Base. Diamonds stained with blood and tears would eventually become embellishments for those celebrities or beautiful women, not jewelry for the workers. Ding Meng suddenly felt very emotional. He remembered an old proverb, one who wears silk is not a silkworm breeder. However, this place was still many times better than Black Gold Base. At least he could live freely. For Ding Meng, this was enough. It was only now that Ding Meng finally understood what Fred meant. That was, he could freely plant the few empty plots of land in front of the gate. That was what he could rely on to settle down here. If he wanted a farm, so be it. Ding Meng did not take it too hard. It was impossible for people to live as they pleased. Adapting to the circumstances was something that people should learn. The three mixtures that Old You gave him were obviously not something that the cheap nutrient solution in Black Gold Base could compare to. First of all, the appearance was very beautiful. Naturally, it had the unique dagger logo of the Empire printed on it. Secondly, there was the name of the manufacturer. Norse Empire Autumn Pool City Anvil Food Production Company, Limited. The label on the surface of the test tube also had a description of the capacity, energy 500 plus decars. This was easy to understand. A normal person's daily energy requirement was around 120 decars. The nutrient solution in the Black Gold Base had a capacity of 40 decars. Almost 12 vials were equivalent to 1 vial from Old You. Since Old You had given him 3 vials, it was basically equivalent to giving him 10 days' worth of food. Presumably, Old You was taking care of him. Back in his house, Ding Meng felt very emotional. He had escaped from Black Gold Base to the Norse Empire in almost one night. Moreover, he had come to such a peaceful place. Although he had escaped from a dangerous environment, survival was still his primary goal. Survival, no matter which environment you were in, was never a simple matter. Chapter 58. Ding Meng didn't fall asleep that night. He had actually stayed in the hibernation pod for almost 8 days, so his brain wasn't that tired. Plus, Origin ability users didn't need a lot of sleep. After swallowing a nutrient solution, Ding Meng sat cross-legged on his bed and directly entered a meditative state. The Origin energy on planet T-112 was obviously not as dense as on the domed planet. Little Rascal's explanation was, the closer you are to Liang, the more Origin energy there is. This is because the origin of the universe began from the Big Bang. The Origin energy in his body was abundant, so he didn't need to consume too much. However, Ding Meng still couldn't control his curiosity and asked Little Rascal to open up the human figure in his consciousness space. The fourth Origin was still in his heart, but it was actually behind his right atrium. After careful observation, Ding Meng felt that the Diamond Star technique wasn't something that just anyone could cultivate. It could be said that the complexity and quantity of the fourth Origin was even greater than the previous 3 combined. At a rough estimate, it was at least 5 times more complex than the previous 3. But the fourth Origin is the most important step. Little Rascal became very serious when it came to cultivation. Do you still remember Julie? Of course he did. Julie was Ding Meng's first real opponent because Julie was an Origin ability user, not a normal person like the Leopard machine gun. Ding Meng naturally had a deep impression of that battle, especially when Julie's annihilation of Ice Palm created a bubble of blue energy at the end. It had directly imprisoned him in place, unable to move. Little Rascal very directly explained, the thermal and ice elements compete in brute force. If you had successfully constructed the fourth Origin, her 3-layered waves wouldn't have been able to freeze you to the point of being unable to move. If you had been able to dodge, her ultimate move would have missed. You wouldn't have had to endure it all. Think about it. If that had been the case, it wouldn't have been so difficult to deal with her. She was indeed Ding Meng's little friend. She knew what Ding Meng was most interested in. Therefore, when Ding Meng heard her words, he began to calm down and observe. If one could describe it, the internal structure of the fourth Origin was like a palace sand table. In this palace, not only did one have to remember its overall shape, every hall, every garden, every step, and even every corner had to be clearly remembered. It was just like an architect. You had to consider every detail, not the first 3 points. You were just an artist. You just had to follow the virtual image and draw the gourd. This time, the progress of his cultivation was indeed very slow. Ding Meng gave up after only building 1/10 of it. There was no other reason than that he was hungry again. Sai, according to the standards of the Norse Empire, you can be considered an intermediate Origin ability user now. Little Rascal sighed helplessly. Consumption is a big problem. Ding Meng expressed his agreement. Origin ability users consumed a lot of energy in the first place, and he himself was the one who consumed the most. After just a short while, he already felt like he couldn't concentrate. Little Rascal said, Ding Ming, I've done some calculations. According to your current cultivation progress, you'll need at least 100 hours of time, at least 30 vials of nutrient solution, and, at the same time, complete the construction in one go. Only then will you be considered to have passed. Ding Ming now understood this principle. The reason why he needed to complete the construction in one go was because the human brain's memory wasn't perfect. It was normal for people to forget about the earlier parts after looking at the latter parts. If he continued to observe while constructing, the number of times he was interrupted would increase, and the effect wouldn't be as perfect as it was in one go. In the end, he would still need to continuously strengthen the construction in order to consolidate the effect. This was a very time-consuming process. Wasting time was an unwise thing to do, regardless of whether it was an origin ability user or a normal human. Ding Ming said, "Forget it. Before I have enough supplies and time, I'll just focus on strengthening the first 3 points. At the very least, it's not a bad idea to strengthen my physique. At the very least, I'll be able to cultivate for a short period of time every day." Little Rascal also expressed his agreement. "It looks like that's the only thing we can do for now. Ding Ming, let's go get some supplies first. Let's see if there's anyone else nearby, so we can steal some." Ding Ming said helplessly, "This isn't Black Gold Base. This is the Norse Empire. That citizen official said that I'm a refugee, so I have to follow the rules. Little Rascal, don't even think about killing or robbing." Little Rascal sighed. "Then we'll do as the citizen official said. Let's farm and get some money first. Let's go find that old man you for help." It was already noon the next day. Ding Ming crawled out of the wooden hut and immediately scanned the surroundings with his telekinetic vision. He discovered that Old You wasn't home at all. A light, refreshing drizzle continued to fall from the overcast sky. Ding Ming found Old You in a golden paddy field upstream of a small stream. Old You was currently harvesting wheat with a worn-out sickle. His stooped body was clearly strained. After all, he was a man of his age. "Old You, why don't you buy a robot to help you harvest?" Ding Ming expressed his confusion. He casually fiddled with the wheat. "This is wheat used to make rhubarb wine. The straw is too thick, so harvesting it by hand is very slow." Old You seemed to be happy when he saw Ding Ming. "Ah, little Ding, you've done farm work before?" Ding Ming shrugged. "I know a bit. I saw this kind of wheat when I was a kid herding cows. It's considered a high-grade crop." Little Rascal expressed his suspicion when he heard this. "Herding cows? You're bragging, aren't you?" Old You sighed. "Robots are quite expensive. The cheapest one costs more than 3,000 tokens, and you'll have to go to Autumnpool City to buy one. Isn't it better to save this money?" The currency circulating in the Norse Empire was called tokens. It was a low-content gold coin that was generally used in small places below the city-state level. 100 tokens could be exchanged for 1 galactic coin. Galactic coins were the mainstream virtual currency. Ding Ming suddenly remembered that he didn't even see a transport cart in Old Yu's yard. It was probably because the old man was used to being thrifty and did everything himself. He looked at the paddy field again. It was estimated to be 2,000 to 3,000 square meters, and less than a fifth of it had been harvested. Ding Ming couldn't help but ask, "You harvested this field this morning?" Old You nodded. "I plan to finish harvesting it in 3 days. It's barley season now, so the merchants will be coming here the day after tomorrow." Ding Ming thought that at this rate, it would take more than a week to finish harvesting it. "Forget it, Old You. I'll help you harvest it." Old You immediately became happy. "That's great. Little Ding, wait here. I'll go find you a knife." "No need. I have a knife." Ding Ming flicked his wrist, and the dark golden T-shaped knife flipped into his palm. Old Yu's eyes widened. "You can harvest wheat with a knife like that?" Ding Ming didn't answer at all, because he had already rushed out like a shuttle car. Old Yu couldn't see his movements clearly at all. All he could see was the countless straw and wheat stalks in a rice field in front of him shooting up into the sky, flying all over the sky at a speed that made one speechless. About 10 minutes later, Ding Ming rushed back. All the stalks in his path fell to the ground, forming a new golden path. "You." Old Yu's eyes widened. "Little Ding, are you an origin ability user?" "Crap." Ding Ming cursed inwardly. "It must have gone too far. However, he still pretended to catch his breath. No, I used to harvest wheat when I was young. I can run, so I'm fast. But your knife. Old Yu still couldn't believe it. Ding Ming hurriedly explained, "This is a treasured knife passed down in my family. It's very sharp and can even cut meat." Hearing this, little rascal gritted her teeth in anger. "Liar Ding Ming, you really know how to lie. Someone gave it to you, but you said it was a family heirloom. You bastard." Ding Ming couldn't be bothered with her. "Old Yu, what do you think?" Old Yu's mouth fell open. He stood there in a daze, unable to say a word. Ding Ming's work in 10 minutes was equivalent to his 3 hours of work. What could he say? That afternoon, Ding Ming helped Old Yu with his work in the paddy fields. The wheat in the fields was quickly harvested. Ding Ming even took the initiative to help Old Yu tie up the wheat and move it to the yard. It wasn't that he was being kind. Rather, he felt that he had to do something to repay the 3 nutrient solutions that Old Yu had given him. However, Old Yu couldn't stop smiling at Ding Ming's efficiency. He even took the initiative to invite Ding Ming to have dinner together. Dinner. Ding Ming began to have doubts again. In the past half a year, he had only eaten a real meal on the Swordfish spaceship steak. "Yes, dinner. Dinner that we made ourselves," Old Yu explained with a smile. "Because little man is coming back tonight." Chapter 59. The dinner was sumptuous. There were fried corn kernels, braised sauerkraut, wild asparagus for plates of bread, a plate of Norse Empire special yogurt cheese, a plate of sour plums and pecans, and the rarest thing was that Old Yu had even killed a wild turkey and made a large pot of chicken soup with pine mushrooms. For the rich families of the Norse Empire, this was simply the worst picnic in the country, but for Old Yu, this was already a great treat. Of course, for Ding Ming, this was not even enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. However, Ding Ming would definitely not stuff himself with food like he did on the Swordfish spaceship, because he could see that Old Yu's family was not well off financially. On the way back, he had already asked Old Yu in detail. For the 500 kilograms of wheat harvested in the afternoon, the buyer's price was about 600 tokens. Ding Ming had never had much of a concept of money, but with a comparison, he knew the depth of the situation. If he wanted to buy a small intelligent harvesting robot, he would need 3,600 tokens, which meant that Old Yu would have to work hard to plant 10 mu of land. This kind of harvest would only occur once every 2 months, and the robot would also need to be maintained, so Old Yu was reluctant to spend money on it. The nutrient solution was not cheap either. The business center in the nearby Verdant Tarn town sold it for 33 tokens. In other words, an ordinary person could barely survive 2 months of work, so Old Yu had to plant other vegetables and meat in addition to the rice fields. Because Old Yu's daughter was currently studying at the Leaston Academy in Autumn Tarn City, this was a considerable expense. In Black Gold Base, wealth was calculated in points, so people usually did not have a specific concept. But in the real world of ordinary people, Ding Ming now knew that survival was not easy, especially when one had to honestly sell one's labor. In the evening, when Ding Ming came out of the wooden house, he saw Yuman was helping her father with the wheat in the yard. She was slightly tall and dressed very simply. She wore green trousers, a checkered shirt, and a pair of very energetic white sneakers. Her round face looked very healthy, and her big eyes were filled with kindness and sincerity. As soon as she saw Ding Ming, she came up to greet her warmly. "Are you Ding Ming? Welcome, welcome. Come in and have a seat. Dad said that thanks for your help in the afternoon." "Hello." Ding Ming was a little embarrassed. He rarely saw the opposite sex and would not interact with the opposite sex. Moreover, Yuman was not the ugly type. She was full of youthfulness and confidence. She looked like a friendly girl next door. It was easy for young men to feel restrained. Although Ding Ming was restrained, little rascal began to comment casually, "Yo, this girl is not bad. Ding Ming, look at her hair. It's tied in 2 braids. What do you think? Are you interested in dating her? This type of girl is very interesting." Ding Ming said coldly, "Shut up." Little rascal was displeased. "Oomph." After dinner was prepared, the 3 of them quickly sat down at the square table in the courtyard. This time, the main character was obviously not Ding Ming. This was because Old Yu was constantly asking about Yuman's well-being and how she was doing in school. When it came to studying, Yuman was clearly not as confident as before. She held a small bowl and silently picked up food. Dad, my bright fist has already reached the 3rd level of the realm of integration. Last month, during the test, my meditation time in the induction cabin broke through 20 minutes. Old Yu obviously did not know much about cultivation. He only knew one thing, and that was that Yuman was working hard in the direction of an origin ability user. However, she had not become a true origin ability user yet. Whether it was in the Norse Empire or the Holy Grail Federation, origin ability users had a very high social status. The reason Old Yu was still working as a farmer at such an old age was simply to support Yuman's studies. He hoped that Yuman would one day become an origin ability user and have a bright future. Little man, you have to continue working hard. Last time, you said that you could meditate for 17 minutes and 30 seconds. How come after a few months, your meditation time has only increased by a few minutes? Old Yu seemed to be speaking with great sincerity. Dad, meditation is not as simple as you think. Every additional 10 seconds requires a lot of effort. Yuman was clearly not convinced. She muttered in a low voice, "Our family can't compare to those rich classmates. They can buy amplifiers, but I don't have the money to buy them. That's why my progress is a bit slower." Old Yu sighed. That's true. But you're 22 years old this year, and you haven't become an origin ability user yet. Let's see if we can sell this new batch of Spinefoot Bison for a good price and buy some amplifiers. You don't have much time left. This was clearly the true epitome of a normal family. Once they started talking about practical matters at the table, the father and daughter both lowered their heads and silently picked at the food. Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit dull, Ding Ming hurriedly opened his mouth. Sister Yu, does your school specialize in teaching people how to cultivate martial arts? It was no wonder that Ding Ming didn't know. The Norse Empire revered martial arts. Most normal schools focused on cultivating martial arts and sensing origin ability. After all, everyone yearned to become an origin ability user. Only a small number of schools taught other specialized knowledge. Aristocratic schools were where the true experts gathered. There were basically no ordinary people there. Little brother Ding Ming, you can just call me out, man. Yuman saw that it was him who asked the question and immediately became very happy. I heard from Dad that you were able to harvest wheat very quickly this afternoon. Your physical condition is pretty good. Do you also want to become an origin ability user? Old Yu also nodded in agreement. Yes, little Ding's body is good. He can work, and he's still young. He can go and learn. Who knows, maybe he can really become an origin ability user in the future. Little rascal immediately snorted. This silly girl. Our family's Ding Ming has been an origin ability user for a long time. You're just a rookie who hasn't even started. He can beat dozens of you by himself. Little rascal, be quiet. Ding Ming quickly stopped her. He turned to Yuman and humbly asked, Sister Man, can you learn real martial arts in your school? Of course. Yuman immediately became proud. Our Leaston Academy is the best university in Autumn Zay City. There are many subjects there such as combat, martial arts, physical fitness, firearms, cold weapons, manufacturing, refining, alchemy, data, battle armors. She listed more than 10 disciplines in one breath. Ding Ming's interest was immediately piqued. Martial arts had always been his weakness. If he had the opportunity to learn an excellent martial arts, it would undoubtedly be of great help to him in the future. Then, how can I go to your school to learn these? Ding Ming asked. Yuman finally hesitated because she saw her father giving her a look. She immediately realized that she had forgotten that Ding Ming was a galactic refugee. She did not have the qualifications to be a citizen of the Empire and was destined to not be an official student of the Academy. Little brother Ding Ming, what kind of martial arts do you want to learn? Yuman began to change the topic. Ding Ming thought for a moment and said, I want to learn everything because I know too little. This was the truth. After living as a refugee for so long, the only thing he knew was how to survive. Even when he escaped to the Swordfish spaceship, He didn't even know how to dodge the particle laser cannons. Xing's amazing performance on the spaceship had left a deep impression on him. There was no harm in learning more. Who knows, maybe one day it would come in handy at a critical moment. Little Rascal could help him a lot of times, but that was all in theory. No matter how good his theory was, it couldn't compare to his own actual combat skills. Yuman really didn't know how to respond to Ding Meng's words. Chapter 60. In the silent night, the drizzle finally stopped. Ding Meng returned to her small wooden hut. There was definitely no light in the house, but he had long been accustomed to the darkness. Ever since he gained telekinesis vision, it didn't matter whether it was dark or not. Just as he was contemplating whether to carry out a new round of strengthening training, he had already sensed someone approaching from outside. It was Yuman. She was knocking on the wooden door lightly. Ding Meng, little brother Ding Meng, are you resting? Ding Meng quickly stood up. I'm here. What's the matter, sister man? Yuman held a flashlight in her left hand and handed 5 nutrient solutions to him with her right hand. What are you doing? Ding Meng was confused. Yuman pressed the nutrient solutions on his palm. Dad asked me to give them to you. He wants to thank you for helping him harvest so much wheat this afternoon. He's not in good health, so you finished the work that would have taken him a few days to finish in one afternoon. Ding Meng held the nutrient solution in her hands and didn't know what to say. These 5 vials were worth nearly 200 tokens. It was almost the result of old Yu's 10 days of labor. How could he be so generous as to give it away? Seeing his hesitant expression, Yuman felt guilty. Ding Meng, just take them. The hut you live in doesn't even have a door. This used to be the place where we tied up the cows. Uncle Fred asked my dad to renovate it before letting you live here. What's wrong with that? I think this hut is great. Ding Meng was very confused. Compared to the basement in Black Gold Base, even if this hut was renovated from a cow pen, it couldn't be better. Yuman was speechless. This was the first time she met someone like Ding Meng. He actually thought that a cow pen was a good place to live. All right, Ding Meng, didn't you want to study at our school? Yuman brought up this topic again. Ding Meng was indeed interested. Yes, sister man. Do you have any connections? He also knew that it would be difficult for him to enter the Empire's schools with his identity. But as long as he could learn new knowledge and improve his strength, he was willing to give it a try no matter how difficult it was. Yuman said, many of the teachers in our school can sit in on their lectures. Even if you're not a student of our school, you can still attend the lectures. When the time comes, I'll take you there. If others ask, just say that you're my cousin from my hometown. Little Rascal immediately said, Ding Meng, you have to go. Although our Diamond Star technique is powerful, you have to understand the other techniques in depth. Only by knowing your enemy and yourself can you win every battle. Ding Meng nodded, but he was still worried. Is it that simple? Do you need me to prepare anything? Hesitation flashed across Yuman's eyes. Ding Meng, why don't you stay here for a while? Once you have some savings, I'll take you there. The city is different from our village. No matter what you do, you need money. Understood. Ding Meng nodded solemnly. Thank you so much, sister man. He was truly grateful. In his world, apart from Little Four, almost no one was willing to help him. Or rather, even if they did help him, it was mostly in the nature of a transaction. Very few people would help him without asking for anything in return. This was a very warm feeling. He was even a little glad that the Empire's fleet officers had thrown him into this place. In the end, this normal society was much better than the Dark Base because it was full of human kindness. With the 5 new nutrient fluids, Ding Meng's cultivation progress for the night was undoubtedly much smoother. The construction of the 4th origin was completed by about 1/5. Now that he was circulating the origin energy in his body again, he only needed to think about it, and the energy would quickly and accurately converge on that part of his body. According to Little Rascal's guidance, Ding Meng was constantly strengthening the mirror in his body while he was constructing the origin. The battle with Julie had made him understand that this was actually his most powerful defense at the moment. The first time he successfully condensed the origin energy, it took him 32 minutes and 46 seconds to spread it throughout his body. After 2 days of repeated cultivation, It only took him 1 minute and 2 seconds to successfully condense the origin energy. Although the time had been greatly reduced, there was also a problem. If he wanted to break through this time limit, he would have to endure an even more painful process of condensing the origin energy. Right now, even increasing the time by a single second was quite difficult. The suffocating feeling in his chest made him feel like he could faint at any moment. Although Ding Ming cultivated through the night, more than 30 hours had passed by the time he opened his eyes. It was now the morning of the third day. The long-awaited sunlight appeared in the sky today. It was different from the artificial sunlight in the dome of the black gold base. This kind of sunlight didn't make people feel hot or stuffy. It was like an autumn afternoon, especially pleasant. The sunlight felt lazy and comfortable when it shone on the body. Using his telekinesis, he first scanned the area. There was actually a huge trailer parked in front of Old Yu's house. The trailer looked like a rectangular metal box, but its bottom was a crystal power system. The crystal flames that sprayed out made the trailer float on the road. It seemed like the merchant who bought the wheat had personally come to visit. There was only one person who came. It was a middle-aged man with a full beard. He wore a green vest with the words "Ching's of Food" printed on it. He was helping Old Yu move the wheat in the yard onto the trailer. When he saw Ding Ming appear, Old Yu smiled. "Little Ding, you're here." Ding Ming scanned the area again. "Where's Sister Man? Why don't I see her?" Old Yu was struggling to carry a bundle of wheat. "She went back to school yesterday." Ding Ming hurried forward. "Old Yu, I'll help you." The middle-aged man next to him opened his mouth and said, "Hey, I've never seen you before. Are you new here?" Old Yu smiled happily. "This is Little Ding, my new neighbor. He just arrived here a few days ago." The middle-aged man also looked very friendly. "Hee. My name is Adu. You can call me Fatty Do. Hello, Brother Do." Ding Ming also smiled shyly. After a few days, he gradually got used to dealing with the villagers in the countryside. Not to mention other things, the people here were very simple. At least they didn't let him smell danger. Adu was an employee of the town's Ching's Food Purchase Company, Limited. He specialized in buying all kinds of agricultural product from the villages in the suburbs. Old Yu was his most stable supplier. According to Old Yu's introduction, Adu had been doing this in Qingzi town for almost 10 years. With the help of Ding Ming, a strong labor force, the wheat stacks quickly filled up the carriage. Adu had already turned on the miniature civilian wrist device and was calculating for Old Yu. The barley for the rhubarb wine, including the straw, is 1,103 pounds. According to the purchase price given by the company today, the total is 992 tokens. But Old Yu, since you're an old friend, let's make it 1,000 tokens. The number is auspicious. What do you think of 10-star coins? It's also convenient to pay with the wrist device. Old Yu was pleasantly surprised. Why did the purchase price increase so much this time? Adu's expression was a little upset. Recently, a new company came to town. They're also buying raw materials everywhere. It said that they belong to some Howhan group. Our boss urges me to work every day. We have to be faster than them, so the price went up. Howhan group? Old Yu frowned. Apparently, he didn't know what kind of group it was. Adu said they even opened a martial arts school in town. They're recruiting people everywhere. They say they're recruiting talents. What kind of talents can there be in a small town on a peripheral planet? Really? When he complained, Ding Ming became interested. "Wait, brother, the martial arts school is recruiting people? What kind of people are they recruiting?" Adu looked at Ding Ming's thin and short stature. "Hee, little brother, do you want to go to the martial arts school? With your body, the martial arts school might not necessarily want you." Ding Ming didn't care about his playful gaze. He said indifferently, "I have to try before I know." He really had to try. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to continue living in poverty. The huge consumption seriously affected the progress of his cultivation. The top priority was to find something to do. Once he had money, he could buy supplies. He couldn't expect Old Yu to send him nutrient fluids every day, right? Chapter 61. Verdant Tarn Town was a border town located in the southeasternmost part of Autumn Tarn City's jurisdiction. In the Empire's territory, There were millions of such towns, and each town had a resident population of at least 50,000 people. The Empire had always held martial strength in high esteem. Origin ability users with extraordinary abilities had a very high social status, and origin ability warriors were even more outstanding. Almost all of the Empire's citizens regarded becoming an origin ability user as their greatest glory. Even for ordinary citizens, practicing martial arts was almost a lifelong habit. This way, they could better train their body and strengthen their physique so as to be able to perceive origin ability earlier. Therefore, no matter if it was a city or a village, no matter if it was a street or a small alley, martial arts halls, cultivation halls, martial arts halls, and martial arts squares could be seen everywhere. There were all kinds of people cultivating in these places, from high officials and dignitaries to lowly peddlers. Because it was a border planet, Verdant Tarntown's level of technology wasn't high. On the contrary, it was somewhat backward. Therefore, when Adu stopped the trailer at the crossroads, Ding Ming easily saw the words Vast Verdant Tarn Martial Arts Hall. It was a sign projected by an intelligent crystal advertising device. It worked on the same principle as the ion transmission system on spaceships in space, which could produce a remote three-dimensional projection at any time. The words Vast Verdant Tarn Martial Arts Hall were not only very eye-catching, but the image under the sign was constantly changing. Not only did it accurately display the three-dimensional model, structure, area, function, and location of the martial arts hall, but also refreshed with rows of subtitles. The content included consumer prices, service items, types of recruitment, selection criteria. It was very clear and detailed. In short, no matter what you wanted to do at the Verdant Tarn Martial Art Hall, you would be clearly arranged here. But looking at the restaurants, shopping malls, and business centers next to the dojo, they all used ordinary electronic signboards. Just from this point alone, it could be seen that this newly opened dojo was quite powerful in Verdant Tarn Town, no matter how one looked at it. There was already a long queue outside the entrance of the martial arts hall. It seemed that this place was very popular with the residents. Wow, so many people. It was obviously the first time Little Rascal had seen such a scene. Ding Ming, we can cultivate in this martial arts hall. The environment must be good. Ding Ming's eyelids drooped. You need money. Do you think you can use it for free? He had already seen it on the signboard. It provided all kinds of equipment and tools. There were even nutrition cabins, induction cabins, and medical cabins, but the price. Even the simplest dumbbell and tab cost 5 tokens for an hour of use. He did not know if it was expensive for others, but for Ding Ming, it was daunting because he did not even have a single feather in his pocket. Hopefully, I'll be successful this time. Ding Ming prayed to himself. The long line lasted for 20 minutes before it was his turn. The uniformed staff at the entrance was very polite. Excuse me, sir, are you a member of our club? Hello, I'm here to apply for the recruitment, Ding Ming replied in a low voice. The staff smiled at him. Hello, please come with me. The martial arts hall was divided into 3 floors. It covered a large area of about 2,000 square meters. The hall on the first floor was the basic training hall. It had all kinds of equipment such as barbells, dumbbells, pullers, bins, bicycles, treadmills, rowing machines. The most basic equipment was very complete. Every piece of equipment was neatly arranged and used by people. The middle section was the strength training room, which was also a large hall. However, the number of people here was obviously not as many as the basic training hall. Here, there were many burly men doing various body movements. From the looks of their muscles, these people should have been training for some time. There was a side hall near the stairs of the strength training hall. There were rows of black targets on the wall. Dozens of men and women wearing boxing gloves of various colors were seriously hitting the targets. The hall was filled with the sounds of ha 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 ha. Ding Ming noticed that every time the boxers punched, the electronic scoreboard above the target would show the score of the strength of the punch. Interesting. Ding Ming was very interested. Yeah, it's not bad. Little Rascal was also very satisfied with this new environment. Of course, her focus was on the data. According to her calculations, these people's scores were mostly in the range of 30 to 60. After all, the people who came to the martial arts hall were normal people. This range was the standard for normal people. Moreover, These people were considered to be stronger than normal people. Finally, the staff brought Ding Meng to a small room in the side hall. "Sir, please come in. Manager Hu is here." The translucent glass door opened automatically. Ding Meng took a deep breath and walked in with his chest puffed out. In the end, he was here to apply for the recruitment. It was better to keep his spirits up. He thought he looked good, but the people in the room didn't see him that way. Hu Qi was the human resources manager of the martial arts hall. He was 40 years old this year, the most attractive age in a man's life. This was indeed the case. He was dressed in a suit and leather shoes. His tie flowed elegantly. His handsome and mature face, paired with gold-rimmed glasses, gave off the impression of a refined, professional elite. In his eyes, the people who came to apply for the recruitment today were roughly divided into two groups. One group was tall, powerful, and burly. These people were mostly physical trainers, martial arts instructors, and strength trainers. The other group was dressed neatly and had an extraordinary appearance. These people were obviously office workers. However, the person who came in now was already outside of these two groups. He didn't know where the tattered clothes he was wearing came from. There were 2 holes in the knees of his pants. His hair was messy, as if it hadn't been washed for many days. He looked extremely sloppy from head to toe. Most importantly, he was clearly a child. He wasn't tall, powerful, or elegant. Who was he? What was he doing here? "You?" Hu Qi was stunned for a moment in his office chair. Ding Meng was very direct. "Hello, Manager Hu. My name is Ding Meng. I'm here to apply for the recruitment of a sparring partner." It took Hu Qi a long time to come back to his senses. "Ding, Ding, little brother, are you in the wrong place?" Ding Meng was puzzled. "I'm not in the wrong place. This is the vast Qingze Martial Arts Hall. I'm here to apply for the recruitment." Hu Qi intuitively believed that this was a kid from some town who was used to being wild and came to the martial arts hall for fun. It was reasonable to say that at this time, he should inform the security to take the kid away and then hand him over to the public security office across the street so that the kid's parents could take him back. However, his good professionalism prevented him from doing so. This was because he saw that Ding Meng did not wear the miniature wrist device that symbolized citizenship on his wrist. Thus, he thought a clever way to drive people away. Ding Meng, right? Did you leave your wrist device at home?" This was a hint to the other party in disguise. Ding Meng was also a bit helpless. "Manager Hu, your martial arts hall did not say that you would not recruit people without citizenship. My home is at Yuanshan Farm in Qingxi Village 5. You can check it out." Hu Qi immediately turned on the miniature optical computer on the office table. The holographic screen quickly rose. Not only did it show Ding Meng's information, but at the end of the message, there was also a message from Qingze Town Civil Protector Douglas Fred. "Foreigner, no bad record." It was obvious that Ding Meng had left a good impression on Fred. There was even an additional note attached. It was obvious that he sympathized with Ding Meng because he was an interstellar refugee. This could also be considered as a way to take care of him in disguise. Of course, if Fred knew who had died at Ding Meng's hands, he would probably vomit blood. There was indeed no bad record, but his record of killing people was solid. Moreover, the people he had killed were all fierce people. Hu Qi had a headache again. After thinking for a while, he waved at the staff at the door. "Xiao Wei, take this Mr. Ting to the strength testing machine outside to test his strength. According to the procedures, our martial arts hall sparring partners also need to meet the strength requirement." "Yes, Manager Hu." Xiao Wei understood tacitly. He knew that Hu Qi was trying to drive people away in disguise, so he politely bowed to Ding Meng and gestured. "Mr. Ting, this way, please." Chapter 62. Sparring partner, from its literal meaning, was to train with you. A sparring partner of a dojo was obviously not there to spar with customers, but to take a beating. What kind of strength did a sparring partner need to test? The real test should be one's resistance. But since he was already here, he had no choice but to comply. And so, Ding Meng followed Little Wei to the row of black targets. There was no one at the edge of the target. Before raising his fist, Ding Meng couldn't help but turn around and ask, What's the minimum score for a sparring partner? Little Wei was stumped by this question. The sparring partners who had come to the dojo in the past had never tested their strength, so where would they get the minimum score? But Little Wei was smart enough to immediately answer, 100 points. 100 points was 100 pounds, which was about 200 pounds of force. How could a normal human reach this standard? A single punch could cause someone to spit out blood or break bones. That was the standard of the leper machine gun back in Black Gold Base. There was a reason why Xiao Wei had set the standard so randomly. Almost none of the customers who came here could give a score of 100. Those who could score above 80 were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. There was no way Ding Ming could reach that standard. Little Rascal suddenly popped up. Ding Ming, you're an origin ability user. Don't use too much force. Just do a little. If you break the machine, we won't be able to pay for it. We don't have any money right now. Oh, that's right. Ding Ming suddenly came to his senses. He had almost thrown a punch. Fortunately, Little Rascal had reminded him in time, but he couldn't be too casual about it. It would be terrible if he couldn't hit 100 points. At the end of the day, he still hadn't seen the actual statistics of strength, so he couldn't make up his mind. But that wasn't the case in Little Wei's eyes. His opponent was clearly scared. Mr. Ting, please throw a punch, Little Wei urged. Ding Ming replied, okay. As soon as the word left his mouth, Xiao Wei's vision blurred. He couldn't even see how his opponent had punched him. The only thing he could see was the red score on the white scoreboard. Ding, 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 ding. It was climbing up rapidly. Before he could regain his senses, there was a long beep, and the number on the scoreboard was fixed, 446 points. Yeah, it's all right. Ding Ming heaved a sigh of relief. This boxing target was quite sturdy. It seemed that it had not been damaged. 446 points was not bad. It was at least 3 times higher than the standard. You can't think that I'm unqualified, right? Huh? No, what's wrong with you guys? Ding Ming suddenly realized that his surroundings were quiet. The entire boxing testing hall was silent. Dozens of men and women were looking at him as if he was a monster. Xiao Wei's mouth was wide open. What's going on? Ding Ming was puzzled. A burly man next to him stared at him blankly. Little brother, that punch of yours. I guess you broke the record of the dojo. I've never seen anyone who could score 400 points with a single punch. Ding Ming was curious. What's the highest score you can get here? The man said, the highest score I've seen is 108 points, and that was from a professional boxer. *T, Ding Ming thought to himself. He must have gone overboard again. Little brother. Oh no, big brother. The man had already changed the way he addressed Ding Ming. Can you teach me how to practice boxing? At this moment, Hu Chi finally rushed out of the office and waved at the stunned crowd. I'm sorry. There's something wrong with the scoreboard. The score isn't accurate. Please continue. It's fine. Everyone, continue practicing. Phew. Ding Ming sighed in relief. So, there was something wrong with the scoreboard. No wonder there was such a strange score. Do you need me to retest it? Ding Ming asked. Of course. Let's do it again. Hu Chi obviously did not believe the super high score of 400 points, so he pulled Ding Ming to another boxing target. Mr. Ting, no, Brother Ding, let's retest it. What do you think? All right. Ding Ming thought to himself that the target seemed to be wrapped in soft leather and had a strong cushioning ability. If there was something wrong with the scoreboard, then his punch might have been a bit too strong. He should be gentler this time. Oh well, I won't use my fists. I'll just do as Little Rascal said. It shouldn't be a big problem. His idea was simple, but the 40 to 50 pairs of eyes in the audience saw a different story. Ding Ming had his back to the wall, and his right hand formed a familiar knife hand shape. Without even looking at the target, he swung the knife backward. With a muffled sound, the target was accurately hit, and the red score began to rise again with a ding, 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 ding sound. After a few seconds, the number on the scoreboard stopped. With a thud, Hu Chi's gold-rimmed glasses fell to the ground. Xiao Wei's mouth was opened so wide that it could fit an egg. Muscle also rubbed his eyes. He was sure that he did not see wrongly. The score on the scoreboard was 393 points. This score meant that Ding Ming could casually strike anything. Even if it was Meng Nan himself, he would be sent flying by this casual strike. Oh my God! Ming Nan was instantly excited. He grabbed Ding Ming's hand and said, "Big brother, can you teach me how to fight? I'm willing to pay for the extra service fee and tuition. I'll pay for it no matter how expensive it is." His excitement caused the crowd to surround him. They all fought to be the first to shout, "Big brother, teach me. I'm a black iron member of the dojo. Big brother, teach me." "Don't teach him. He's only black iron. I'm bronze. I'll pay the tip." "What's AF asterisk king tip? I'll sign a contract and pay double the service fee." "Teach me. Hurry up and teach me." "Tis TSK, big brother, that kick just now was amazing. 393 points. I'll never reach that level in my lifetime." "One kick." He used his palm. "For eyes, are you stupid?" "Oh, sorry. My eyes are playing tricks on me. I didn't see clearly." All right. Everyone, stop arguing. Stop arguing." Hu Qi and Xiao Wei had already returned to normal. They were trying their best to maintain order. "Haha, everyone don't panic. This is our dojo's sparring partner, Mr. Ting, Ding Ming. If you need anything, you can apply for a sparring partner service." Hearing Hu Qi shout, Ding Ming was a little happy. "That, Manager Hu, I applied for a sparring partner. Do I meet the requirements?" Hu Qi pushed the gold-rimmed glasses on his nose bridge decisively. His face was full of righteousness. "Mr. Ting, oh no, Brother Ding, congratulations on passing the test. I'll create a file for you now. You're officially a member of our dojo. Welcome to Great Waves Group." Ding Ming stared at him suspiciously. "Didn't the advertisement say that there's a 3-month trial period?" "Oh, no. Hu Qi shook his head like a rattle drum. Then, he started to talk nonsense with a straight face. "Brother Ding, you're different." "How can I be different?" Ding Ming was curious. Hu Qi's face was serious. "Our Great Waves Group is a large corporation. We take extra care of interstellar refugees. We know that you don't have citizenship, so we specifically canceled the trial period. This is our humanistic care and the excellent corporate culture that we've always passed down." What kind of outstanding corporate culture was this? A ferocious person who could casually score 393 points with a single palm strike. Who knew how strong his strength was? If Hu Qi didn't even have this bit of foresight, then he shouldn't be the HR manager anymore. He should go beg on the streets outside. If a talent like Ding Ming was poached by other dojos, the boss would probably hire a hitman to kill him. "Thank you so much, Manager Hu. Our dojo is really good." Ding Ming thanked him from the bottom of his heart. "Brother Ding, you don't have to call me Manager Hu. Just call me Xiao Hu." "Yes, Xiao Hu. "Okay." Ding Ming was a little unaccustomed to this guy's attitude. "That, Manager Hu, when can I start working at the dojo?" Hu Qi immediately raised his index finger and said seriously, "Brother, you can start working now." Chapter 63. The second floor of the dojo was the sparring area. It was made up of a number of multi-purpose halls, and most of them were formal arenas. Customers could come in groups of 2 or 3 to spar, while those who came alone could also choose a sparring partner to spar with. The customers who came to the second floor to train were definitely not the same level as those on the first floor. Most of them had a certain foundation in martial arts, or were about to perceive origin ability. They could be considered as the more powerful people among ordinary humans. Of course, there were also origin ability users who came here sometimes. No matter what level a person was at, martial arts was a necessary training course. This was because martial arts required one to rely on one's own hard work to practice. Ding Ming had already been brought to the staff area by Xiao Wei to take a bath. He had changed into a set of white, soft training clothes, and he looked much more spirited. His dirty face had been cleaned up, and he could still be considered handsome. However, he was still short, and he looked like a child. In this era of technology and origin energy coexisting, coupled with the fact that everyone practiced martial arts, the average lifespan of a citizen of the Empire was over 130 years old. The lifespan of an origin ability user was even longer, and there were plenty of people who had reached the peak of their cultivation who were over 800 years old. With Ding Ming's current appearance, Those who didn't know him would never think of him as an origin ability user. After all, he was just too young. Sparring partners in the dojo had a lot of flexibility. Normally, sparring sessions would last for 2 hours, and the appearance fee would be 100 tokens. That was the most basic salary. Then, the fee would be determined based on who the sparring partner was. If the customer was strong, the sparring partner's income would rise accordingly. If the customer was satisfied with the sparring partner, they could even get a tip if they were lucky. This was why Ding Meng had chosen the dojo. In truth, this wasn't his choice, but Little Rascal's idea. Not only did Ding Meng have no concept of money, he also didn't know anything about income, planning, or operations. He only knew one thing, and that was that no matter how bad Little Rascal's ideas were, he wouldn't scam him when it mattered. Right now, he didn't have any money. When he didn't have any money, that was when it mattered. On the south side of the second floor's sparring area was a metal hall built purely out of alloy plates. It was specially designed for people of a higher level to practice. The hall was almost empty, with only a few sports equipment scattered in the corner. A girl with a perfect figure was concentrating on lifting a barbell. Xiaowei knocked on the door. "Miss Chu, your sparring partner is here." Miss Chu put down the barbell and immediately saw Ding Meng when she turned around. She couldn't help but frown. "Is this the new sparring partner you found?" There was obvious distrust in her voice, but Xiaowei could only smile and explain, "Miss Chu, he's a new sparring partner in our dojo. He's pretty good, and I believe you'll be satisfied with him this time." Miss Chu stared at Ding Meng, but she waved at Xiaowei. "You can go out. He stays. Remember to close the door." "Thank you." The door was an electronic metal door. It was quite heavy. Once it was closed, it made people feel like they had entered a closed metal cage. Ding Meng also stared closely at the girl in front of him. As soon as he entered, he felt the fluctuation of origin energy. He activated his telekinesis vision and saw clearly that the girl's entire body seemed to be surrounded by a layer of faintly discernible light. He immediately raised his vigilance and focused. Little Rascal finally turned serious. "Ding Meng, this woman is very likely an origin ability user who cultivates body tempering." Body tempering was different from heat and ice. Body tempering focused on tempering one's physical body, and its resistance was very high. Even a beginner origin ability user would be equipped with armor that was impervious to fire and water. However, Little Rascal's next words distracted Ding Meng. "TSK. This woman's figure is really domineering." "Ding Meng, this is the first time I've seen a woman with such a great figure. She's even better than that Julie." Little Rascal didn't make a fuss this time. Miss Chu wasn't very tall, and she wore a black short-sleeved t-shirt that exposed her navel. The hem of the shirt was tied in a knot, making her slender waist and perky bosom stand out. The t-shirt looked light and elastic, and the outline of her bra was clearly visible. Below, she wore tight, white spandex pants that tightened her well-proportioned thighs and round buttocks. Not only was she beautiful and fashionable, she was also full of seductive charm. Most importantly, Miss Chu's face was also very delicate. Her forehead was tied up with a blue headband, and her curves were astonishing. She was youthful, fashionable, and beautiful. In short, when men saw her, they couldn't help but associate her in some unspeakable direction. At this time, Miss Chu had already walked over to Ding Meng. A fragrance mixed with her body odor and sweat wafted over. Ding Meng couldn't help but feel a little restless. However, he couldn't be blamed for not having enough willpower. For a healthy man with vigorous hormones who hadn't seen many creatures of the opposite sex in 20 years, this was an instinctive reaction. As expected of Little Rascal, he immediately started a new round of comments. "Ding Meng, did you see her but just now? It's like a big pumpkin. It must feel good to the touch. Are you interested in touching it?" "Shut up, Little Rascal." Ding Meng took a deep breath and forcibly suppressed the inexplicable restlessness in his heart. Miss Chu looked at Ding Meng. "Hello. I hope you won't disappoint me. My time is very precious." Ding Meng was very calm. "Hello, Miss Chu. Manager who has already told me." Miss Chu said, "Very well. Let's start now. Ding Meng saluted with his fists. Miss Chu, please. Earlier, Xiaowei had repeatedly told him about the various rules of the dojo. A sparring partner had to look like a sparring partner. The sparring partner couldn't possibly make the first move. Miss Chu didn't say anything else. She threw a straight punch at Ding Meng's chest. She didn't underestimate him. There had to be a reason why the dojo dared to send such a short person. However, it was also because he was about the same age as her that she held back a little in her punch. However, Ding Meng casually moved to the side, and the punch missed. Miss Chu retracted her fist and nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. As soon as she finished speaking, she decisively stepped forward. This time, it was a straight punch aimed at Ding Meng's face. Both her speed and strength were much greater than before. Ding Meng still moved to the side, staggered, and retreated according to the rhythm of her attack. Unexpectedly, the punch missed. She quickly moved to Ding Meng's right side and counterattacked with her left elbow. This change wasn't fast, but it was too consistent. Ding Meng had to take it this time. With a pa sound, his palm caught the fist steadily. Young Mistress Chu made use of this momentum and used her elbow to lean against her body. She spun around and swept her right leg over. Ding Meng was no stranger to this kind of leg sweep. He had experienced it with bamboo pole before. However, he was wrong this time. Although his left palm blocked the kick, the opponent's spinning momentum didn't stop. Her left leg followed. Not only was the speed fast, it was almost seamless. This was something that bamboo pole couldn't do. Ding Meng could only retreat again. Unexpectedly, after Miss Chu landed on the ground, she leaned forward, bent down, and stretched out her body like a swallow ready to strike. She threw a straight punch at the opponent's thigh. Her right leg lifted and hooked Ding Meng's chin. With two muffled sounds, Ding Meng's left leg and chin were hit at the same time. He staggered back a few steps. What kind of martial arts technique is this? Ding Meng was curious. Little Rascal said, I don't know either. However, I'm already recording it. I can replay it in the space of consciousness later. Miss Chu's consecutive attacks were successful. She stood still with a smug look on her face. Are you okay? Ding Meng touched his chin. I'm fine. Thank you for your concern. Let's continue. Miss Chu's eyes revealed a hint of joy. Okay. After she finished speaking, she rushed forward again. This time, the whole room was filled with continuous sounds of palm and fist strikes. The two figures intertwined. Most of the time, she took the initiative to attack, while Ding Meng kept retreating to defend himself. Chapter 64. Another series of scissor-like kicks came at him. Ding Meng had no way of dodging with his back against the wall, so he had no choice but to roll forward to dodge. Miss Chu's left foot stepped on the steel plate, and her body spun horizontally. Her right foot swept through the air, creating a sharp sound of wind. This kick was extremely powerful. Ding Meng quickly sensed that even though his palm had blocked the other party's ankle, the force behind the kick had not disappeared. Instead, it seemed to explode from his palm and spread upwards. Ding Meng felt a faint pain in his entire arm. Little Rascal was shocked. She actually knows 1-inch punch. Ding Meng frowned. What is 1-inch punch? Little Rascal did not have time to explain. Be careful. Miss Chu's chain whirlwind came again. This time, Ding Meng was unable to dodge. He did not circulate the origin energy in his body and relied purely on his body. As a result, he was kicked to the ground and rolled a few times before standing up again. Miss Chu stopped attacking. She was a bit dissatisfied. Why are you only dodging and not fighting back? Ding Meng thought to himself, it's not that I don't want to fight back. This is the dojo, not the black gold base. If I fight back, I'll kill you. If I really fight back, I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your life. Miss Chu want me to fight? Ding Meng probed. Of course. Miss Chu grumbled unhappily. You're a sparring partner, not a punching bag. What's the point of me fighting you alone? Okay. Ding Meng's eyes shone brightly. He took a step forward and aimed a punch at her face. Then, something unexpected happened. Ding Meng rushed forward, circled around, and struck with his elbow. Then he leaned his elbow against his body and spun around, sweeping his right foot out. His right foot was blocked, and his left foot was sent flying. What kind of move did Miss Chu use just now? He was actually using it, and he was doing it perfectly. Miss Chu was shocked. She took a few steps back. You also know the 9 forms of sparrow attack. Ding Ming ignored her completely. As soon as he landed, he stretched his body, crouched down, bent over, and rushed forward, punching and kicking. The back hook with the right leg was definitely not something that could be learned on the spot, so it was easily neutralized by the opponent. However, the forward punch landed solidly on the opponent's groin. This was what it meant to miss by a millimeter, but make a huge mistake. Little rascal started to be naughty again. Hee hee, Ding Ming, you brat. But doing this on purpose, aren't you? You want to hit her there, right? In the end, it missed, you idiot. At this moment, Miss Chu had been knocked to the ground and had even rolled several times on the ground. Ding Ming did not dare to use too much force. He did not want to mess with the customer. Unexpectedly, not only did Miss Chu not get angry, she even laughed after getting up. Good fellow, not bad at all. Let's do it again. Previously, all the sparring partners in the dojo had been beaten to a pulp by her. This time, there was finally a good sparring partner. No matter what, she had to practice properly. This practice lasted for 3 hours. Ding Ming was definitely beaten to a pulp. This was obviously intentional. He wanted to see what kind of moves the 9 forms of sparrow attack was. He was secretly learning, but Miss Chu was even more surprised. This brat was like a cockroach that could not be killed. No matter how much force she used, Ding Ming would at most roll a few times on the ground before getting up. He did not seem to be injured at all. In the end, she was finally tired. Her body was drenched in sweat, and she sat on the ground, panting. Ding Ming had no choice but to sit down and hold his breath. The smell coming from Miss Chu's body was too strong, making it hard for him to control himself. Furthermore, he did not dare to raise his head to look at her. Her gym clothes were completely soaked in sweat, and her silhouette was too obvious. It was too easy to let one's imagination run wild. Ding Ming had already turned off his telekinesis vision. Although he was not a gentleman, he had his own principles. He never liked to take advantage of others, especially women. Miss Chu was undoubtedly very satisfied with his actions. She took out an exquisite mixture from a small bag on the ground and threw it to him. This is for you. Take it. Ding Ming caught it and looked at it. It was actually a nutrient solution from Anvil, but it looked much more high-end than the mixture that Lao Yu had given him. It was probably a high-end product. As expected, the label indicated the capacity, 1,300 plus energy. Miss Chu raised her head and drank one. Right, what's your name? Ding Ming carefully put away the mixture. Miss Chu. My name is Ding Ming. Ding Ming. Miss Chu was clearly confused by his actions. Why was he not replenishing his energy? Was he saving the nutrient solution to give birth? Ding Ming, you don't have to call me Miss Chu in the future. My name is Chu Shaoqing. I feel like I'm about to break through, so I come here often. You can accompany me in my practice in the future. Okay, Ding Ming replied respectfully. After a short rest, Chu Shaoqing entered the inner room of the training hall to wash up and change. When she came out, she could not help but make people's eyes light up. She wore a pure white baseball uniform that covered her entire body. She wore a baseball cap on her head, and her brown curly hair flowed down the sides of her face. It made her delicate face look even more charming, making her look even more youthful and beautiful. In any case, no matter how attractive she was, you would never be able to tell that she was an origin ability user. As soon as she came downstairs, the beautiful customer manager who, and the others quickly surrounded her, like stars surrounding the moon. Miss Chu, how was your practice today? The customer manager, was very concerned about this question. Chu Shaoqing was the highest-level supreme member of the dojo, and she had been dissatisfied for 4 or 5 days. She hoped that she would not leave with a cold face like before. Today's progress was okay. Chu Shaoqing seemed to be very relaxed. She turned her head and looked at Hu Qi. Manager, Hu, that newcomer Ding Ming is not bad. I still have to practice tomorrow. Tell him to report on time at noon. Hu Qi was flattered. Miss Chu, please rest assured. Our aim is to satisfy our customers. Your satisfaction is our biggest wish. However, his words could not be heard because Chu Shaoqing had already walked out of the dojo's door. It's not easy to satisfy her. It seems that the new sparring partner is not bad. Du Yu sighed lightly. That's a must. Hu Qi began to feel proud. Then, he began to shamelessly boast about himself. Sister Du, I won't hide it from you. From the moment he walked into our dojo, I knew that this guy was a talent. Those muscles, that handsome appearance, that elegant demeanor. Cough, cough. Ding Meng, when did you come down? Oh, no. Brother Ding, Brother Ding. Ding Meng said. Manager Hu, are there any other tasks today? Hu Qi waved his hand and said, No, brother. You can rest today. How are you? Are you tired? Ding Meng was a little disappointed. He was hoping to practice with others so that he could learn more combat skills. Fortunately, I'm not tired, Ding Meng replied indifferently. Let's go. I'll take you to get your salary today. Hu Qi affectionately hugged Ding Meng's shoulder. He was happy now. As long as Miss Chu was satisfied, everything else was fine. Chapter 65. The salary of a sparring partner in the dojo was daily because sparring partners were the most likely to get injured. Part of the income had to be used to buy medicine or timely treatment. Therefore, once the sparring partner finished their work, the dojo would pay them on the same day. The finance department was next to the human resources department. The hologram on the desk had been unfolded, and it listed the income of Ding Meng accompanying Chu Shaoqing for this afternoon's practice. Time, 3 hours and 12 minutes. Appearance fee, 160. Membership fee, 340. Additional service fee, 500. Total remuneration, 1,000. It was easy to understand the appearance fee and membership fee, but he did not know what the additional service fee was. Fortunately, Hu Qi had already explained with a wink, this is the tip from Miss Chu. Brother Ding, seize the opportunity. Take advantage of what opportunity? Ding Meng did not understand. Hu Qi explained, Miss Chu is a member of the Chu family in Autumnzay City. If you practice with her and she is satisfied, she will help you in the future and you'll be rich. Oh, Ding Meng's reaction was very cold. Hu Qi said, Brother Ding, don't you have the identity of an interstellar refugee? If Miss Chu is willing to help, your citizenship is very easy to solve. This could be done. Ding Meng thought that not having an imperial citizenship was sometimes really troublesome. Take the 1,000 tokens, for example. Under normal circumstances, they should be exchanged for 10-star coins, but he did not have a wristband, so he could not exchange them at all. He could only use the heavy backpack of the dojo and carry on his back like a rag picker. In any case, this money came quite easily. Thinking about how old you had to toil in the field for 2 months to earn 1,000 tokens, Ding Meng was able to easily earn it in an afternoon. This undoubtedly made Ding Meng very happy. This trip to Verdantarn town was not in vain. It was already evening when he walked out of the dojo. The lights of the town were also lit up. The colorful billboards on the roadside, the vehicles shuttling back and forth on the streets, the bustling flow of people, and the various kinds of building lights were all reflected in Ding Meng's eyes. They were all very cute and very warm. However, none of this piqued his interest. Currently, the only place he could go for a stroll was the business center opposite the dojo. Simply put, this place was a convenience store that specialized in providing daily necessities. Nutrient fluids were undoubtedly a mainstream product. The interior of the business center was divided into several purchasing areas, each of which had electronic labels: consumable area, amplifier area, medicine area, food area, beverage area, tool area, material area. Rows of shelves in the consumables area were neatly arranged with all kinds of mixtures. There were also low polymerization, medium polymerization, high polymerization, special polymerization, and many other categories to meet the needs of different people. No matter how detailed these nutrient solutions were, they all had one thing in common. They were all produced by Autumn Pool City's Amble Company. Ding Meng observed for a while. The 500-plus Deca nutrient solution that old you gave him before was only a mixture with low polymerization energy and was sold for 33 tokens each. On the other hand, the 1300-plus Deca premium product that Chu Xiaoqing gave him was a product with high polymerization energy and was sold for 100 tokens each. Forget it, it was still more cost-effective to buy the lower-grade product. After buying 30 nutrient solutions in one go, the 1,000 tokens that he had received in the afternoon had basically been spent. Sigh. Money came easily but left quickly. Dingming couldn't help but sigh. Moreover, with his own origin energy consumption and cultivation speed, these 30 nutrient solutions would probably be completed in a single night. He could roughly remember the structure of the fourth origin. The only thing he lacked now was the nutrient solution. From another perspective, as long as the nutrients in his body could keep up, the construction speed would only be faster and not slower. Dingming, let's go to the nearby park to cultivate, Little Rascal suggested. This is a town, and there are too many people passing by. If you meditate, you'll be too conspicuous. To avoid unnecessary trouble, it's better for you to find a place to lie down and meditate. In any case, with the K-virus, you don't need the induction cabin. Dingming also felt that this made sense. When he was in Black Gold Base, he didn't have a deep enough understanding of the value of the K-virus. Now that he was in a normal society, he finally realized how heaven-defying it was to be able to directly absorb origin energy and cultivate without the help of the induction cabin. However, before he constructed the fourth origin, Dingming first observed the battle between him and Chu Xiaoqing in the space of his consciousness. Little Rascal's level 1 authority could also create another phantom, Chu Xiaoqing's phantom. As long as Dingming fought with her, Little Rascal's memory function could record the opponent's data for Dingming's reference. Ordinary people relied on their brains to recall the battle. Obviously, it wasn't as direct, clear, and realistic as Little Rascal's AI program. This was because in the space of his consciousness, the two phantoms were fighting each other. Not only could Dingming clearly see Chu Xiaoqing's various attack patterns, he could also discover his own shortcomings in dealing with them. Currently, he knew which 9 forms of the 9 forms of Sparrow attack. He just couldn't name them. In general, this martial arts technique mainly focused on close-quarters combat and fierce attacks. It also had good continuity and coordination, and the various movements seemed to be more suitable for women. In the space of his consciousness, the phantom's left foot stomped on the wall, bounced back, and swept its right foot through the air. Dingming suddenly asked, "Little Rascal, what's this 1-inch punch you were talking about?" Little Rascal explained, "Actually, 1-inch punch is a type of explosive force. In close-quarters combat, you first stack up your strength with continuous movements and circulate your strength to a level where you can freely control it. Then, you contract your muscles and cause the origin energy in your body to rebound, instantly releasing an external force. In layman's terms, it's a powerful martial arts technique. It's very difficult for opponents to guard against it. You've experienced it before, right? Your opponent can use it at any time. You have no idea when she'll use it." Dingming's expression became thoughtful. Little Rascal said, "If you want to break this technique, there are 2 ways." Dingming's eyes lit up. "Which 2? Little Rascal said, "The first is the traditional method. You have to strengthen your body and train yourself to the point where you're impervious to fire and water and invulnerable to blades and spears. No matter what kind of force she uses, she won't be able to hurt you." Dingming nodded. "That's something that I have to train in." Little Rascal continued, "The other method is for you to learn it as well. Only when you learn it will you be able to sense the signs of her eruption. I know that it's very difficult to explain this with data, but only by accumulating a large amount of combat experience will you be able to understand it." Little Rascal suddenly sighed. "Actually, this Chu Xiaoqing really isn't simple. Think about it. She's an origin energy user who has tempered her system. Logically speaking, her resistance should be very strong, but instead, she has a lot of attack patterns. Her speed and strength aren't weak either. The most important thing is that she can actually use one-inch punch. As far as I know, explosive force techniques are most suited for thermodynamics users, but she just happened to learn it. Ding Meng said, "So you're saying that she's an expert in both thermodynamics and body tempering?" That's not wrong. Seeing his serious expression, little rascal hurriedly explained, "Ding Meng, actually, you're the same. With your current resistance, even if Chu Shaoqing used all her origin energy to attack you, 3 of her wouldn't be able to hurt you." That's not true. Ding Meng's expression became even more serious. Even a small town on a border planet of the Norse Empire has such a talent. Who knows how many more powerful experts there are in other cities? You can't afford to be arrogant and neglect her. Correct. Little rascal immediately became serious. Ding Meng, you have to work hard. The martial technique you're going to train in is also related to explosive force. Oh, Ding Meng's eyes lit up. What kind of martial technique is it? I won't tell you the name for now, lest you rush for success, little rascal explained. If you want to learn it, you'll have to first construct the 4th origin before you're qualified to learn it. Chapter 66. In the afternoon, the sun was particularly bright. A fashionable and light blue bird shuttle slowly floated on the streets of Qingzi town. Chu Shaoqing, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was looking at the scenery outside the window. It had been half a year since she became an advanced origin ability user. She was about to become a true origin ability warrior. According to the Empire's evaluation standards, she had already constructed 4.5 origin points in her body. Her physical fitness was B-grade level 1, and her origin ability index was 2,932 points. She had the cultivation technique, tenacious nirvana technique, 9 styles of swallow attack, heavenly star explosion, and cloud steps. No matter which city in the empire she was in, she would be regarded as a proud daughter of heaven because she was only 21 years old this year. This age was enough to show her future potential. However, her origin ability index of 2,932 points was only 68 points away from the 3,000 points mark. She was stuck at the advanced origin ability user level and couldn't break through for a long time. Under normal circumstances, origin ability users had 3 ways to break through. First, they could take drugs to enhance their perception and absorption ability. Second, they could repeatedly consolidate their origin points to achieve the effect of strengthening. Third, they could cultivate martial arts to enhance their physical fitness. It was said that there were 1,000 ways to achieve the same goal. The ultimate goal was to better absorb more origin ability energy. However, Chu Shaoqing felt that she had reached her limit with the first 2 methods. Therefore, she had been repeatedly cultivating martial arts recently, but the progress was quite slow, which made her very anxious. Seeing her thoughtful expression, the female driver in the driver's seat couldn't help but say, "Miss, don't think too much. Your achievements are incomparable to many of your peers. Instead of being anxious, it's better to let nature take its course. When I was your age, I wasn't even an origin ability user." The driver was a subordinate of the Chu family for many years. Chu Shaoqing couldn't help but smile and say, "Sister Zhong, you don't have to comfort me. I know the current situation. The school's exam seems to be half a year away, but in fact, there isn't much time left for me. If I don't pass the exam, then I will lose too much face." As she spoke, her smile suddenly froze. "Sister Zhong, please stop the car." Sister Zhong was puzzled, but she still did as she was told. Following Chu Shaoqing's gaze, she also saw, outside the gate of Qingzi Park, a young man in tattered clothes was curled up on a bench. He seemed to be sleeping soundly. His clothes were tattered to begin with, and, at this moment, the sunlight shone through the gaps between the leaves. There was not a single part of the young man's body that was intact. Chu Shaoqing stared at Ding Meng, who was sitting on the bench. She seemed to be in a trance. Sister Zhong turned on her wristwatch and scanned the bench from a distance. Soon, Ding Meng's information was reflected on the screen. "Miss, he's a galactic refugee. Sister Zhong turned her head and explained with a tone full of sympathy. His residence is in the Qingxi countryside. He might have come to Verdantarn town to make a living. Without a place to stay, he can only sleep in the park. Chu Xiaoqing nodded, obviously agreeing with this statement. However, at this moment, her thoughts were even more complicated. This galactic refugee, who was dressed shabbily and had difficulty making a living and did not even have a place to stay, was actually not far from her in terms of martial arts. It could be seen how hard he worked under such difficult conditions. She had a good cultivation environment, but she had been stagnant. What was there to be proud of? Sister Zhong's expression suddenly changed. Miss, you have to be careful. I feel a slight fluctuation of origin energy on his body. Huh? Chu Xiaoqing also showed a surprised expression. He's also an origin ability user? She was not surprised that Ding Ming was an origin ability user, but that there was actually an origin ability user who went to the martial arts hall to be a sparring partner. Moreover, it was such a young sparring partner. This was simply a waste of one's talent. Not to mention the distance, just in the area of Autumn Tarn City, if an ordinary person became an origin ability user, at least the major academies would compete for them. Those with a little talent would definitely focus on training. Once they were promoted to a source strength warrior, their future would definitely be bright. How could there be a reason to not cultivate and run to be a sparring partner? Of course, it did not exclude some origin ability users from poor families. Because of the huge expenses needed to make a living and cultivate, they had no choice but to do other side jobs. Sister Zhong sighed again. It's a pity that the fluctuation on his body is very weak. Maybe his talent is not good. She had made the same mistake as the officer of the patrol fleet, but this time it was not Little Rascal's shielding function, but Ding Ming himself who was controlling it. It was reasonable to say that with Ding Ming's level and strength, he should not be able to completely control the origin energy in his body. It was just that his escape from Heijin Base had been too dangerous. Most of the time, his goal was to preserve his life. Thus, his cultivation was focused on strengthening, and his progress in constructing the origin was relatively slow. This created a unique situation. Ding Ming's foundation was particularly solid. Although there were only 3 origins, these 3 had basically reached the realm of being able to freely control them. If there was a flaw, it would only be perceived by people with higher strength or a higher level. However, even if they perceived it, it would cause other people's judgment to be biased. Chu Xiaoqing closed the window. Let's go, Sister Zhong asked. Miss, where are we going now? Chu Xiaoqing said, to the vast martial arts hall. Almost an hour after the Bluebird shuttle left, Ding Ming woke up from the bench. He stretched in satisfaction and greedily inhaled a few breaths of fresh air. He felt very refreshed. After a night of cultivation, Ding Ming was already halfway done with the construction of the 4th origin. To be precise, he had already constructed 3/5 of the origin. As the completion rate of the origin increased, Ding Ming could feel that the first 3 origin points were also growing stronger. The origin energy flow was also becoming faster and smoother. Obviously, the Diamond Star technique didn't simply increase the number of origin points to stack one's strength. Every origin point had an effect of 1 + 1 greater than 2. Ding Ming was looking forward to the appearance of the 4th origin point. What kind of qualitative change would happen? Now, as long as he had enough nutrition, the formation of the 4th origin would be just around the corner. However, when it came to money, it was a bit of a headache. It was easy for others to spend money, but difficult to earn money. It was easier for him to earn money, but easier for him to spend money. It was better for him to go to the martial arts hall. In any case, he would have a job as a sparring partner. He would see how long Miss Chu would train today. The longer she trained, the more money he would get. When Ding Ming arrived at the martial arts hall, Hu Qi and Du Yu were like ants on a hot pan. Brother Ding, why are you only here now? It's almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Hu Qi looked very anxious. Ding Ming was a bit embarrassed. Sorry, I just woke up. You really can sleep. Hu Qi rubbed his hands anxiously. Miss Chu arrived a long time ago. She didn't want any of the other sparring partners we arranged. She specifically said that she wants you to practice with her. Hurry up. Ding Ming immediately ran to the staff area to change his clothes. Ask Miss Chu to wait for a moment. I'll be there soon. Chapter 67. On the second floor, in the southern hall of the fighting area, Ding Ming felt that something was wrong as soon as the heavy metal door opened. In his perception, there was an extremely strong energy fluctuation in the room. These fluctuations were like ripples on the surface of water. They spread out from the inside of the room, but they didn't have the gentleness and agility of flowing water. Instead, they had a heavy and solid aura to them. The source of these fluctuations was Chu Shaoqing, who was in the middle of the room. After he activated his telekinesis vision, he discovered that the halo around Chu Shaoqing's body was very bright. It wasn't as faint as it had been the day before. It was obvious that she had begun to circulate the origin energy in her body. Ding Ming could also sense her intense desire to do battle. However, Ding Ming still calmly walked forward. Miss Chu, I'm sorry I'm late. Chu Shaoqing stared at him. Ding Ming, my origin energy index is currently 2,932 points. As soon as she said this, Ding Ming immediately went on high alert. Of course, he knew what this index meant. The problem was that Chu Shaoqing had randomly told him this. Did she know that he would understand it? This meant that she had probably seen some clues. Ding Ming remained calm. Congratulations, Miss Chu. You're about to become an origin energy warrior. Chu Shaoqing said, Unfortunately, I'm not one yet. Ding Ming said, But you're about to break through. Chu Shaoqing sighed softly. I heard from my instructor that in those critical moments of life and death, a person can often break through their own limits. Ding Ming agreed with this statement. When a person was in a life or death situation, their potential would often be stimulated. Their strength, speed, and reflexes would all be much greater than normal. Could it be that Miss Chu wants to have a life or death battle today? Ding Ming asked suspiciously. Chu Shaoqing's expression became serious. That's right. I don't have much time left. I need to break through my limits. Ding Ming sighed. Miss Chu, have you found the wrong person? I'm just a sparring partner in this dojo. Chu Shaoqing smiled. Ding Ming, you're too humble. I'm already an advanced origin ability user. You're not much different from me in terms of martial arts. Do you think I'll believe the words of someone with such qualities? No matter how useless you are, you should be able to sense origin energy. You don't have to be modest. Little rascal suddenly sighed. What she said makes sense. Ding Ming, you haven't completed the cultivation of the foundational cultivation technique, so you still can't completely seal off the spontaneous fluctuations of your origin energy. It's possible that she was able to see through it. Ding Ming sighed helplessly. Miss Chu, no matter what kind of request you have in practice, I can accompany you. However, it's too dangerous for me to comply with your request in a life-and-death battle. Chu Shaoqing said, Ding Ming, you don't have to worry. The martial arts school has advanced medical cabins. They can save you even if you're seriously injured. Ding Ming suddenly smiled. Miss Chu, you misunderstood me. Chu Shaoqing frowned. Misunderstood? Ding Ming put away his smile and said seriously, Miss Chu, although you've activated your origin energy, I can't sense any killing intent from you. Killing intent? Chu Shaoqing still didn't understand. Ding Ming sighed. Yes, you don't have any killing intent. I know this is a very mysterious way of saying it, but it really exists. His sighing was not without reason. When a person truly wanted to kill, it was usually due to anger, hatred, profit, survival, and other such factors. At this time, even if the enemy was standing motionlessly in front of you, you would still be able to sense their hostility and hatred. It would produce a bone-deep chill, so cold that all the hairs on your body would stand on end. The following battle would be a true life-and-death battle. Just like Leopard, Machine Gun, Julie, and the others, Ding Ming could sense danger at any time. However, Chu Shaoqing would not give Ding Ming such a feeling. Although she looked like she was about to fight, at most, it could be considered a battle intent, but it was definitely not killing intent. Suddenly, the origin energy fluctuations on Chu Shaoqing's body weakened a lot. It seemed that she had stopped circulating her origin energy. What you said makes a lot of sense. How do you know all this? Ding Ming smiled bitterly. He thought to himself, if I throw you into the black gold base and let you stay there for 3 to 5 months, you'll be able to learn all this by yourself. However, the next moment, Chu Xiaoqing's origin energy fluctuations suddenly increased. Ding Ming, I don't have much time. Let's start. As soon as she finished speaking, she rushed forward. It was completely different from the previous day. Her charge stirred up a large wave of wind. Before her fist even arrived, the wave of wind was already so strong that it was hard to open one's eyes. Even without Little Rascal's reminder, Ding Ming knew that Chu Xiaoqing had circulated her origin energy to launch an attack this time. The strength of her punch was definitely not as simple as yesterday's ordinary punches and kicks. Sure enough, when the first punch arrived, Ding Ming knew that it was powerful. This fist was like a steel drill. When his palm met it, he immediately felt a thick and heavy energy vibrate in his palm. This rock-like power passed through his arm and into his chest, directly sending Ding Ming flying. He fell into the machine in the corner, making the barbells clatter. Seeing Ding Ming fall in such a sorry state, Chu Xiaoqing was not worried. Instead, she seemed very satisfied because Ding Ming quickly got up. If someone with an average physical fitness had taken this punch, they would have either broken bones or been seriously injured. However, Ding Ming was obviously fine. The facts proved that Sister Zhong's opinion was correct. Ding Ming was a genuine origin energy user. Ding Ming was also a little infuriated by her punch. It seems like you're going for real. Miss Chu, sorry for the offense. Ding Ming also secretly circulated his origin energy. You're from the thermodynamics department? Chu Xiaoqing felt the temperature of the entire room suddenly rise. It was obviously caused by Ding Ming's origin energy fluctuations. Ding Ming's reply was a punch of the same style. This punch was not something she could block. In fact, Chu Xiaoqing had also used her palm to meet the punch. The problem was that although she had caught the punch, she did not have the strength to do so. The force of the punch quickly passed through her palm to her body. She only heard a crisp ding sound. It was as if the punch had hit a steel plate. Even so, she was still forced to take a few steps back. Before she could completely stand firm, she suddenly noticed from the corner of her eye that Ding Ming, who was opposite her, had disappeared into thin air. Not good. Chu Xiaoqing instinctively felt danger. Sure enough, Ding Ming's figure appeared on her left side. His elbow was aimed at her shoulder. This was the most standard flying swallow dance from her 9 forms of swallow attack. She did not expect that Ding Ming would be so proficient in it in just one day. This time, she could not block it at all. Because the speed was too fast, his elbow instantly hit her shoulder. Another ding sound was heard. Chu Xiaoqing's body fell to the ground. Before she could completely fall to the ground, Ding Ming's flying leg came sweeping down, landing on her waist. Bang! An extremely stiff, muffled sound was heard in the room. This kick sent Chu Xiaoqing flying. Her whole body rolled and hit the wall. As she fell, she could only see stars in front of her eyes. Her palm, shoulder, and waist were all scalded by a shocking amount of heat. However, she was even more shocked. She was an origin ability user who specialized in tempering. What she was proud of was her ability to resist attacks. Her opponent had taken her down with just a few punches and kicks. Could it be that this Ding Ming already had the strength of an origin energy warrior? She was shocked, but Ding Ming was even more shocked. Just now, if it was someone else, why didn't you try it on someone else? Chu Xiaoqing definitely would not be able to get up from the ground. However, not only did she quickly stand up, but she also did not seem to be injured. Origin ability users who specialized in tempering were really good at resisting attacks, especially when the sound of the fist hitting her body was like hitting a steel plate. It was clear that her foundational cultivation technique was spontaneously defending herself. Ding Ming did not dare to treat her as a woman. Miss Chu, I'm sorry. It's fine. Chu Xiaoqing twisted her shoulder. Ding Ming, let's continue. You have to be careful this time. Chapter 68. It was 6 o'clock in the evening. The dojo welcomed the peak hour of the day. The people of Green Tarn Town, who were off work, came to practice. However, it was time for Hu Chi to get off work. After a busy day, he had already tidied up his desk and was preparing to leave with his handbag. Who would have thought that Duyu would run in a panic? Manager Hu, it's not good. Your newly recruited sparring partner, Ding Ming, I don't know how they practiced in the afternoon, but he injured Miss Chu. What? Hu Chi's head buzzed, and he was stunned. Did I hear wrongly? Say it again. Duyu said, it's true. He injured her quite badly. Miss Chu is being treated in the infirmary. Hu Chi put down his handbag without saying anything and rushed out. In the center of the infirmary on the second floor, a beautiful white medical cabin was slowly closing its protective cover. Chu Xiaoqing, with disheveled hair and a swollen face, was lying inside receiving treatment. This high-end Angel 3 civilian medical cabin was not comparable to the V-shaped medical cabins in Heijin Base. As soon as the person lay inside, the hologram beside it immediately showed the exact information. Target's condition: weakness 35. 78% target symptoms: 2 bruises on the face, 4 shock injuries on the shoulder, 4 shock injuries on the waist, 22% degree of fracture of the right wrist, 2 broken ribs, 57% degree of injury. Looking at the rows of data, Hu Chi was completely dumbfounded. Then, he was unable to restrain his anger. Ding Meng, what's wrong with you? Ding Meng helplessly said. Miss Chu was very engrossed in her practice today, so you bastard. Hu Chi was furious. Didn't I tell you before? Our dojo's customers are supreme. How could you injure Miss Chu? She's a supreme member of our dojo. Ding Meng did not speak. He thought to himself, I didn't want it to be like this. She used all her energy to attack me, but I was already holding back. If I really used all my energy, her current situation would be even worse. However, now was not the time to argue with each other. 7 or 8 pure and bright rays of light descended from the top of the medical cabin. They scanned Chu Xiaoqing's body back and forth at an extremely fast speed. In just 10 seconds, Chu Xiaoqing opened her eyes. At this time, even the bruises on her face had disappeared. It was enough to show the efficiency of this high-end instrument. Miss Chu, how are you feeling? Duyu quickly went up to her. I'm fine. Young Mistress Chu sat up and scanned her surroundings. Hu Chi and Duyu were anxious, but Ding Meng was very calm. He stood there quietly, no different from before. This time, Chu Xiaoqing was truly convinced. She had been fighting with Ding Meng for almost 4 hours, and no matter how hard she tried, she could not hurt him. In the end, she could barely hit Ding Meng a few times with all her strength. Ding Meng was fine, but she was not. This was because her opponent used her 9 forms of swallow attack to beat her up so badly that she could not take care of herself. Speaking of the same martial arts technique, the effects of different levels of strength would be completely different. When she hit Ding Meng, it was like she was scratching an itch, but when Ding Meng hit her, it was as easy and pleasant as cutting wheat. Ding Meng is not bad. Chu Xiaoqing returned to her usual cold and indifferent expression. She really admired Ding Meng. He was so poor, but he had such a high cultivation level. It was worth learning from him. In the future, if her conditions were good, she would definitely be able to become a warrior. However, Hu Chi and Duyu did not think so. It was obvious that she was dissatisfied with Ding Meng's excessive behavior. Therefore, after young Mistress Chu left the dojo, Hu Chi glared at Ding Meng fiercely and said, "Come to my office." This was Ding Meng's second day at the dojo, and it was just like yesterday. Hu Chi sat on the chair and looked at Ding Meng with a strange expression. Big brother, I really have to call you big brother. Do you know who young Mistress Chu is? Ding Meng was even more confused. Manager, who? Didn't you say that young Mistress Chu is from the Chu family in Autumnpool City? Hu Chi said, I did say that, but I forgot to tell you that Anvil Corporation is the Chu family's property. Everything we eat and use is produced by them. Oh, Ding Meng still did not have much of a reaction. Seeing his cold expression, Hu Chi became angry. Our dojo can't afford to offend such a big shot. Ding Ming said, "So what? So what?" Hu Qi was even more dissatisfied with his tone. He immediately put on a serious expression. "Big brother, oh no, Mr. Ting, according to the rules of our dojo, starting tomorrow, you don't have to work here anymore." It was obvious that he was going to fire him. However, Ding Ming still did not have much of a reaction. "Then you should at least give me my salary today, right? Of course we have to distribute it." Hu Qi's expression eased a lot, but he was still curious. Logically speaking, it was normal for a sparring partner to be fired. Most sparring partners would argue, but Ding Ming was unusually calm, as if he did not care at all. Little Rascal was dissatisfied. Hey, this is too unfair. He wants to fire you? Ding Ming, aren't you going to fight back?" Ding Ming did not care. "Why should I fight back?" Little Rascal was anxious. "You should at least fight to stay here, right?" Ding Ming said, "As long as I get paid, what does it matter if I stay or not?" "You." Little Rascal was speechless. She had forgotten that Ding Ming had no concept of work, pay, or planning other than looking for money and cultivating. "You're just a barbarian," Little Rascal said angrily. Little Rascal huffed. "Great. Now you've lost your job, and you don't like to look at beautiful women. Don't even think about touching that pumpkin, but in the future." Ding Ming was also speechless. "I don't know what's so good about touching a pumpkin, but do you even like the place where you poop?" Little Rascal was completely defeated by Ding Ming's unorthodox way of thinking. On the screen in the finance office, the earnings from the afternoon practice were quickly listed. Time, 3 hours and 53 minutes. Appearance fee, 192. Membership fee, 340. Additional service fee, 5,000. Total remuneration, 55.32. At first glance, the salary was no different from yesterday's. The only difference was that the tip was 10 times higher. This time, not only was Hu Qi dumbfounded, but even Ding Ming was dumbfounded. "Did you guys make a mistake?" Hu Qi was puzzled. How could we make a mistake? How could the photon processor make a mistake? Poverty still limited Ding Ming's imagination. 5,000 tokens. This was practically money for free, casually giving it away. Miss Chu was really generous. Of course, she was generous. Chu Xiaoqing was quite satisfied with Ding Ming as her sparring partner. For her, it was really too difficult to find a suitable and stronger sparring partner in the realm of origin ability users. It was only because she had seen Ding Ming sleeping on a bench in the park during the day that she did not want Ding Ming to be burdened financially. Thus, she gave him a bit more tips. She hoped that Ding Ming would be in good condition tomorrow and continue sparring with her. At this rate, she felt that she would soon break through. Chapter 69. Chu Xiaoqing's wish was undoubtedly disappointed because when she arrived at the dojo on time the next day at noon, she did not see Ding Ming's figure. Where is he? Is he still sleeping? Chu Xiaoqing deliberately stopped the car when she passed by the gate of Qingza Park today. Unfortunately, there was no one on the park bench. Hu Qi hurriedly explained with a smile. "Miss Chu, Ding Ming felt that he was not suitable to be a sparring partner, so he resigned last night." "Oh," Chu Xiaoqing disappointedly responded. She could basically guess what had happened. The dojo was definitely afraid of offending her and dismissed Ding Ming. "Then where is he now?" Chu Xiaoqing still had a glimmer of hope. Hu Qi replied, "Sorry, I don't know." Ding Ming was obviously no longer in Qingza town. At this moment, he was sitting in Adu's big and broken purchase truck, rocking back and forth on the country road back to Qingxi village. The afternoon sun was strong, and the wind blew through the golden wheat waves. The fragrance of the rice field was refreshing. Ding Ming enjoyed this feeling very much because it felt like he was returning home. Although he had only worked for a day in the vast martial arts club, he had still earned a sum of money. With 5,000 tokens, he went to the business center and bought 50 bottles of 1,300-plus high-end nutrient solution. This batch of supplies was enough to support his next training. Old Yu was still working in the field. When he saw Ding Ming return, he was very happy. "Little Ding, you're back. How was it? Did you get anything from the town?" Ding Ming took out 5 bottles of high-end nutrient solution from his backpack and stuffed them into Old Yu's hands. Not much, but there is still some. Old Yu, you take them first. The explanation of the 1,300-plus deca content clearly surprised Old Yu. Little Ding, you have to be frugal. The 1,300 deca content is too expensive. You can buy more if you change it to 500 deca content. Did the shopping guide in the business center recommend you to buy the more expensive one? Under Old Yu's scolding, but also full of concern, Ding Ming went into his cabin with satisfaction. 45 bottles of high-end nutrient solution. No matter what, it should be enough to support the next cultivation. Ding Ming, don't think it's that simple. Our Diamond Star technique isn't some low-end technique. The further you go, the harder it gets. Little Rascal explained. The same goes for origin points. Every origin point is easy at first, but when you're about to complete it, it becomes very complicated and difficult. You have to focus. After spending a day in the dojo, Ding Ming had basically figured out the Empire's standards for cultivation techniques. Cultivation techniques were divided into a total of 1 to 10 stars. Simply put, based on the number of origin points that were constructed within the body of an origin ability user, the corresponding cultivation technique would be the corresponding level. For example, if you had an origin point in your body, then if you cultivated the simplest cultivation technique, it would be a very ordinary beginner level 1. This kind of origin ability user was usually non-combat type, and cultivation techniques below 3 stars were all prepared for non-combat type origin ability users. Only by surpassing the 3-star level would one be qualified to become a warrior. 3-star level techniques could usually be bought at the superpower centers or luxury shopping malls in big cities. However, it was very difficult to obtain anything above 3-star level. It required all kinds of channels, and it wasn't something that could be bought with money. Chu Xiaoqing had constructed 4.5 origin points in her body when she was an origin ability user. This at least meant one thing. Chu Xiaoqing wasn't raised by an ordinary family. Her resilient nirvana art was very likely a 5-star cultivation technique, which proved that her cultivation method was very ambitious. She needed to lay down a solid foundation as an origin ability user. However, Ding Ming wasn't interested in her at all. He only knew one thing. I only have 3.5 origin points, and it's already better than your 5-star cultivation technique. Then, this bro's Diamond Star technique is obviously stronger, so it's reasonable that it's difficult to cultivate. The 4th origin point was already more than half completed. If this point was really a palace, then the first half of the process was only to determine the main frame of the palace. The second half was to construct the specific outline, find striations, and complete the internal facilities. The designer had to consider every place and every detail, including the flowers and plants outside the palace. As the 4th origin point gradually took shape, Ding Ming could already feel the changes it brought. The original 3 origin points could still expand, which meant that the upper limit of their capacity was still increasing. The diamond mirror formed between the 3 origin points was shockingly bright, but when the 4th origin point appeared, the 4 origin points were connected by 6 origin coins. It was no longer a flat mirror, but a 3-dimensional prism formed by the 3 origin coins. Originally, the surface of the mirror was just a pattern. Now it was like a real diamond. Every part of it was smooth, exquisite, and outstanding. Is that it? Ding Ming couldn't help but ask. Little Rascal immediately said, "Circulate your energy and condense a single mirror." Following her instructions, Ding Ming willed it, and a single mirror quickly appeared. It could be seen clearly in his field of vision, and it could be swung and rotated at will around his heart. Little Rascal said, "Time, 21 seconds. Ding Ming was overjoyed. The time has been shortened again, so this is where the good part is. However, Little Rascal wasn't happy. Then what if you condense a prism again? As expected, Ding Ming was no longer happy. As soon as he condensed the 3 origin points into a 3-dimensional prism, the mountain-like pressure on his chest appeared again. Last time, It felt like it weighed more than 500 kilograms, but this time, it felt like an entire mountain was pressing down on him. His vision darkened, and he almost fainted. However, he didn't let his guard down. He knew that this was a critical moment, and he had to hold on. Once he collapsed, all his previous efforts would be wasted. The painful pressure slowly receded under his stubborn resistance. After an indeterminate amount of time, a pyramid-like prism finally took shape. It was like a never-ending fountain, endlessly transmitting pure energy to his limbs and bones. Little Rascal said coldly, "Time, 34 minutes, 3 seconds. This." Ding Meng was shocked. "This is basically the same as returning to the starting point. That's why I told you not to celebrate too early," Little Rascal explained coldly. "Every step of progress requires a great deal of effort." "Understood." Ding Meng puffed out his chest. Little Rascal's tone softened slightly. "It's time to show the results of your progress. Retract your psychic vision from the space of consciousness and expand it to the normal mode of the outside world." In Ding Meng's field of vision, the telekinesis circle was released outwards with a whoosh. It easily passed through the wooden house and expanded to a very far place. Based on visual estimation, the distance was 50 meters away. Unlike before, not only could his psychic vision perceive everything in the outside world, he could also clearly hear all kinds of sounds. The night wind blew through the paddy fields, causing the wheat to rustle. On the bluestone beside the stream, some unknown bugs were lying on it, letting out low, buzzing sounds. Next door, Oldie was lying in a deep sleep on his bed. His light snoring sounded a little like the sound of a trumpet. Right, the projection television in the room didn't seem to be turned off. It seemed to be broadcasting the Interstellar Combat International League. This is because my perception has improved significantly. Ding Meng scanned his surroundings. He felt like he was an omnipresent ghost in his psychic vision, able to see through everything. Little Rascal said, "Retract it. Control it to a range of 10 meters. Ding Meng did as he was told. His field of vision shrunk like a sphere of light, limiting it to the space of the wooden house. Little Rascal said, "Do you see the straw stool on the ground?" Ding Meng nodded. Not only did he see it, he could see it even more clearly than before. He could even see the molecular structure of the straw stool clearly. Little Rascal finally said something shocking. "Focus your field of vision on a single point. Use your mind to control it." Chapter 70. In the silent night, there was no light in the wooden hut, but the scene that was happening right now was enough to make one speechless. Ding Meng was sitting cross-legged on the bed with his eyes closed, motionless. However, the two straw stools and the small wooden table on the ground slowly rose into the air, as if a pair of invisible hands were lifting them up and making them float in the air. After a long time, Ding Meng slowly withdrew his consciousness. The straw stools and the wooden table returned to their original positions, as if they had never been moved. Little Rascal said with satisfaction, "Not bad. Being able to release something is not a skill, but being able to withdraw, it is a true maturity. You are indeed very talented in this area." Ding Meng asked, "What kind of ability is this?" Little Rascal said, "Now that the fourth origin has been successfully constructed, the second section of the first stage of the Diamond Star Secrets can be considered complete. The energy it transmits to your head is currently transforming your brain, increasing the development of your brain domain and causing your brain to produce psychokinesis waves. It can produce many wondrous uses. This is a new power, so you must strengthen your cultivation because it consumes a lot of energy." Ding Meng nodded solemnly. "Do I still need to strengthen it?" Little Rascal said, "Of course. Every time you construct a new origin, you need to strengthen it repeatedly. However, right now, I don't recommend strengthening your body's resistance anymore. You should practice the collapsing force and strengthen it from the offense and defense of your fists and feet." Ding Meng was also clear about this point. He had learned Chu Xiaoqing's 9 forms of Sparrow Strike to the point where he could only mimic the form, but not the spirit. Why? This was because he could very easily imitate the movements to perfection, But the essence of this set of martial arts techniques was something that he could not grasp. For example, when would the inch punch that was mixed within it explode? Where would it be used? Without a detailed martial art manual or guidance, it was very difficult to rely on one's own comprehension. It would take a very long detour. However, this was the current situation. No matter how difficult it was, he had to rely on himself to figure it out. Little Rascal's opinion was very important. Ding Ming chose a place upstream of the stream where there was no one. He then jumped into the water and practiced the 9 forms of Sparrow Strike repeatedly. The water was buoyant, and the current greatly reduced the impact of his fists and feet. At first, he had to forcefully circulate his origin energy to practice. Only when he had a good grasp of his center of gravity did Ding Ming follow Little Rascal's advice and gradually weaken his origin energy circulation. Gradually, he could move underwater as if he was on land. The Empire also had standards for martial arts. There were a total of 6 realms: beginner, elementary, advanced, master, meld, greater perfection, peak, perfection, transcendence, and returning to origin, true origin. Each realm was further divided into several smaller stages. Normal martial arts could be practiced for several months without being able to advance by even a small stage. As for advancing by a large realm, it required a lot of hard work. In any case, Ding Ming did not have any concept of time. He had not come out of the water at all. With his telekinesis, he could not be bothered to distinguish between day and night. The only thing that had any concept of time was the nutrient solution. When he only had 8 nutrient solutions left, he finally climbed out of the river. How long did it take this time? Ding Ming could not help but ask. Little Rascal sighed. 14 days, 19 hours, and 56 minutes. Only felt like a short while. Who would have thought that half a month had passed? Ding Ming could not help but sigh. For Origin Energy users, time was as precious as life. Little Rascal said, "Let's try it out." "All right." Ding Ming nodded. He casually lifted up a boulder the size of a medical pod. This boulder weighed at least half a ton and was covered in moss. However, in Ding Ming's hands, it was like a straw stool in a wooden hut. With a light push, the boulder was sent flying into the air. The boulder rose more than 20 meters and came crashing down. Ding Ming did not throw a punch. Instead, he stretched out his arms to welcome it. Just as the boulder was about to hit his chest, Ding Ming's chest suddenly jolted forward. With a muffled bang, the boulder was knocked askew by an invisible force. It crashed into the water, creating a splash several meters high. The splash lingered for a long time, creating a thin layer of mist on the surface of the river. When the light of the setting sun shone down, it actually created a beautiful rainbow. Little Rascal sighed helplessly. Although I'm not sure about the standards of the Empire, there's one thing I'm certain of. This is indeed collapsing force. However, this collapsing force of yours is definitely only at the first level. Ding Ming was also somewhat disappointed. According to his calculations, the boulder should have been split in half. Even if it was not split in half, a small part of it should have been shaken off at the very least. However, in the end, it was only shaken off its flight path. It seemed that there was still a long way to go when it came to martial arts cultivation. Little Rascal said, "The best result should be to stretch your limbs as much as possible. The collapsing force will be released from every part of your body. When trained to the peak, you'll be able to shake off any enemy that comes at you from all directions." Of course, this requires repeated practice of all kinds of martial arts techniques to form this special force that I'm talking about. Although it's only a single move, this single move is equivalent to hundreds or thousands of moves from others. Ding Ming said, "Then what's the name of this move?" Little Rascal proudly said, "The name of this martial arts technique is called Overlord's Mountain Crumbling Force." In the evening, Ding Ming returned to Yuanshan Farm. When he passed by Old Yu's residence, he was surprised to see that Yu Man had returned. "Huh?" Ding Ming's eyes swept over the courtyard. There was actually a very faint fluctuation of origin energy in the courtyard. "Little Ding, you're back." I haven't seen you in half a month. Old Yu warmly greeted him. Coming quickly. Let's eat dinner together. Old Yu, did you run into some kind of happy occasion? Ding Ming discovered that Old Yu was particularly spirited today. His complexion had also become rosy. Yu Man had already skipped over, her face filled with joy. Little brother Ding Ming, I can finally sense origin energy. I'm now a beginner origin ability user. Congratulations, congratulations. Ding Ming allowed a rare smile. So this fluctuation came from Vine. This energy also contained a trace of warmth. He guessed that in the future, she would also be a thermodynamic power user. When a happy occasion came, people would be in high spirits. This time, the atmosphere at the Yu family's dinner table was much more relaxed. The conversation between the father and daughter was also quite pleasant. However, there was still the same problem. Behind this great joy was also a great hidden worry. After Yu Man became an origin ability user, her cultivation would become the most important thing. Her expenses would only increase. Speaking of this, Old Yu was once again worried. Ding Ming hurriedly said, Sister Man, last time, didn't you say that I could sit in on the class at least in academy? Can you take me with you? I was just thinking of going to Autumn Pool City to find something to do. If I can find a good job, maybe I can help you financially. Hee, little brother Ding Ming, you're so considerate. Yu Man couldn't help but smile. But what kind of job are you looking for? Ding Ming was experienced this time. He immediately straightened his back. I could be a sparring partner. Sparring partner? Yu Man was a little surprised. Are you practicing martial arts? Ding Ming could only force a smile. SOSO. I've been practicing in Qingzi town for this period of time. That's a good choice. Yu Man pondered and continued to ask, Are you prepared this time? Yes. Ding Ming quickly straightened his chest. He understood what Yu Man was hinting at. She meant that the expenses would be high and he needed to prepare money. However, he didn't have money. The remaining 8 nutrient solutions would not be a problem for him to support himself for a period of time. In his mind, money was used to buy this. The other things didn't need to be spent at all. Therefore, money was the nutrient solution. A fierce person's thinking was that straightforward. Chapter 71. Qiuzhe City was the central city of Jinfeng Oasis, one of the 3 major regions of planet TT-12. Taking the crystal train from Verdant Tarn Town, it would only take an hour to travel a distance of 5,000 kilometers. Autumn Pool City was different from the cities in the central planet of the Empire that were filled with modern technology. Due to the limited energy on the peripheral planets, it looked a little ancient. Buildings that were a mix of Baroque and Gothic styles could be seen everywhere in the city. It was filled with a classical, artistic, and romantic atmosphere, especially the Leaston Academy. The gate of the school was like a solemn church. Although the crystal projector projected the words Leaston Academy above the gate, it didn't flash dynamically like the vast martial arts hall. The mirror image was static. The silver-gray color and the blue sky and white clouds reflected each other. Coupled with the solemn architecture, Ding Ming's impression of this place was that it was quiet, sacred, and mysterious. This was indeed the case. As the best school in Qiuzhe City, this school had absorbed the talents of more than 90 cities and towns in Jinfeng Oasis. These were all future origin ability users who had been unearthed. Some of them had already become origin ability users, and the school's ultimate goal was to cultivate beginner origin ability warriors. This was to create new blood for the Empire and provide them with talent. On the train, Yu Man had explained to Ding Ming in detail that once you became an origin ability warrior, you could graduate from here. Your future path was quite bright. The first path was the path of enlistment. The Norse Empire's territory was extremely large, and its starfield was located behind the Holy Grail Federation. Although they had always been like fire and water, the two sides had reached a truce agreement many years ago. They had always minded their own business. But the front was facing the 2 major threats of the Frogman Kingdom and the flanks, the Devouring World. The war continued for many years, and the consumption of resources was enormous. Thus, The military attached great importance to origin ability warriors. Thus, enlisting in the army and pledging loyalty to the empire was regarded as the highest honor by the citizens. If you were afraid of death, then the next best thing would be a talent show. The so-called talent show was to participate in the Star Wars League and perform. This was also the patent of the Source Energy Warriors. The Norse Empire and the Holy Grail Federation had reached an agreement on this point. The league between the two countries would be held at the same time. It would be broadcasted live through the International Space Network. A single match would have billions of viewers, and it was easy to imagine how popular the celebrity contestants were. If your ambitions did not lie here, you could still go to a higher-level academy on the central planet to further your studies. After you graduated, you would have more choices. You could work for a large corporation, serve a large family, join a large faction or sect. The luckiest thing was to be chosen by the royal family. That would truly be a meteoric rise and bring glory to your ancestors. Even if you couldn't break through and become a warrior in the end, you would still be able to enter various industries as an origin ability user. Your social status and treatment would be higher than ordinary people. The most typical example would be those celebrities in the entertainment industry. In short, if you came here, then you would have taken a solid step towards the bright future. After entering the gate, a wide and flat road led straight into the distance. Golden ginkgo trees stood on both sides of the road, and every square had a colorful fountain watering the trees. The small paths were arranged in a picturesque manner, and the buildings were exquisite and elegant. It was like a fairy tale world. All private shuttles, aircraft, and equipment were prohibited here. Only the designated inter-school space shuttle could pass through. There was an endless stream of students passing by. Most of them were young people in 2s and 3s. They were all dressed fashionably, and they were chatting and laughing. Even if you didn't know them, you could feel their youthful aura. However, for Ding Ming, what he felt the most was that there were all kinds of origin energy fluctuations here. Some were near, some were far, some were large, some were small, some were strong, and some were weak. This proved that a considerable number of the students here were origin ability users. Since they were here to listen in, Yuman brought Ding Ming straight to the teaching area. The most popular classes in the academy were naturally fighting and armor classes. This was easy to understand. Fighting and kicking were the easiest to learn, so it was naturally the first choice of most people. Armor classes were a bit more complicated, but they were the most high-end and most respected subjects in the mainstream. The second floor of teaching building number 2 was the most retro lecture hall. The teacher on the podium was pointing at the huge holographic screen with a highlighter pen, talking eloquently. The students below were also listening attentively with great interest. When Ding Ming and Yuman arrived, the lecture hall, which could hold 10,000 people, was already packed. Even the aisles were filled with students who were listening in. There was basically no place to stand. Yuman helplessly explained, "This is Teacher Jia Fa's fist technique class. It's the most popular class in the academy. He only teaches it twice a week, and there are a lot of people coming to listen each time. Actually, it was fine not to come to the class live. They could use the photon computer in the dormitory to connect to the class live. However, there were many benefits to attending the class live. For example, in the last half an hour of question and answer time, students could raise their hands if they had a difficult question. Teacher Jia Fa could guide them immediately, and he could even demonstrate it himself. However, Ding Ming was not a student of the academy, so he could only listen in. Ding Ming said, "Sister man, can we find a place with fewer people?" Yuman looked down at the timetable on her wrist device. There are 3 more classes this afternoon. They are dynamics mechanical devices, elementary pharmacology amplification, and classical sword theory. Just from the name, one could tell that it was an unpopular subject. Ding Ming was a bit helpless. Then let's go to the classical sword theory class. His idea was not wrong. Classical sword theory was definitely one of the major categories of martial arts. Even if it was just theory, there was no harm in listening to it. "Hey, isn't this man? Who is this? Is he your boyfriend?" A sarcastic voice suddenly came from the corridor. Looking back, she saw 7 or 8 men and women walking towards her. The leader was a couple, and the one who spoke was a girl with heavy makeup. Her appearance was not bad, but her strange dress made people feel uncomfortable. She did not look like a student, but more like a delinquent. Yuman squeezed out a reluctant smile. Sister Chi, he's not my boyfriend. He's my cousin. This Sister Chi completely ignored Ding Ming. She walked forward and smiled. How about it? Have you thought about it? Yuman smiled, even more reluctantly. I'm still thinking about it. Sister Chi glanced at Ding Ming. Is he also your relative from Qingxi village? Before Yuman could answer, Ding Ming took the initiative. Please take care of me. Sister Chi laughed strangely. Haha, don't worry. We've already taken care of you. If you don't believe me, ask your brother Bao. Brother Bao? Ding Ming could not help but frown. This nickname reminded him of the black gold base's leopard. However, this leopard was not that leopard, but the tall and strong boyfriend next to Sister Chi. His appearance was definitely more handsome than the leopard of the base, but he did not have the cold and ruthless aura of the leopard between his eyebrows. On the contrary, this leopard looked like a hooligan, which was quite a good match for Sister Chi. Hello, Brother Bao. Please take care of me. Ding Ming still appeared to be very polite. Ever since he entered this normal society, the suspicion and vigilance he had in the black gold base had faded a lot. However, international conventions still needed to be followed. Expanding his telekinesis vision, Ding Ming found that this Brother Bao's origin energy was very strong. Strictly speaking, this person was not much worse than Julie. Xiaoman, you also just became an origin ability user a few days ago. Seriously, think about it. Once you've thought about it, give my brother an answer. Don't make us wait too long. After Sister Chi finished speaking, she swaggered away. When this group of people walked away, Ding Ming curiously asked Sister Man, what did she ask you to think about? Yuman smiled bitterly. It's about her brother. Ding Ming was even more curious. What does her brother's matter have to do with you? Yuman had always been generous and confident, but at this moment, she was frowning. Sigh, in short, it's troublesome. Ding Ming could not help but ask, what kind of trouble is it? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.